What are those children doing in first class? This isn't a daycare center. Catherine Whitman's voice carried across the luxurious cabin of Global Airways' flagship A380 service from JFK to Paris. Her manicured finger pointed accusingly at seats 2A and 2B, where 10-year-old twins Zara and Zuri Taylor were quietly settling in. The first-class cabin gleamed with opulence. Hand-stitched Italian leather seats transformed into fully flat beds at the touch of a button. The air carried notes of sandalwood and citrus, Global's signature cabin scent designed to reduce travel anxiety. Catherine's Chanel No. 5 perfume cut through this carefully crafted atmosphere, announcing her presence before her voice did. Flight attendant Sofia Rodriguez moved gracefully through the cabin, her crisp charcoal uniform accentuated by a signature Global Airways blue silk scarf. Good afternoon, Ms. Zara and Ms. Zuri. Welcome back to Global Airways. May I offer you some pre-departure refreshments? Her smile was genuine as she addressed the twins. The girls sat with perfect posture in matching navy blazers adorned with academic pins. Math Olympiad, Science Decathlon, National Spelling Bee finalists. Their natural hair was styled in neat braids, and they carried identical leather messenger bags containing tablets, books, and travel journals. Despite Catherine's loud commentary, they responded to Sophia with practiced politeness. Sparkling water with lime, please, Zara requested, her fingers fidgeting slightly with her tablet case, a small tell revealing that Catherine's words had registered despite her calm exterior. The same for me, thank you, Ms. Rodriguez, Zuri added with a slight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Catherine's Louis Vuitton carry-on occupied the aisle as she deliberately took her time arranging her belongings in seat 3D. Her cashmere wrap, designer handbag, and 3 shopping bags from Saks Fifth Avenue created an obstacle course for boarding passengers. Her platinum blonde bob remained immaculate despite her theatrical huffing. 5 rings adorned her fingers, including a diamond that caught the light with every dismissive gesture toward the twins. First class isn't what it used to be, Catherine announced to no one in particular as she finally took her seat. Her Chanel sunglasses remained perched on her head despite the cabin's controlled lighting, and her Cartier watch flashed ostentatiously as she checked the time. I remember when there were standards for premium cabins. Other first-class passengers continued boarding, their reactions to Catherine's commentary creating a subtle social map of the cabin. James Wilson, a black executive in his 40s, took seat 1K with the practiced efficiency of a frequent traveler, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly at Catherine's words. Elderly couple Robert and Margaret Hamilton settled into 4E and 4F, exchanging concerned glances. Margaret's hand squeezed her husband's forearm, a silent signal between long-married partners. Amanda Peterson, a 30-something tech entrepreneur with vibrant tattoos peeking from beneath her blazer sleeves, positioned her MacBook in seat 5A, her eyes narrowing as she observed the developing tension. The businessman in 6C, Davis Reynolds, according to his luggage tag, nodded slightly at Catherine's comment, establishing himself as a potential ally in her worldview. His Wall Street Journal and gold cufflinks marked him as someone who might share her perspective on cabin standards. Sophia returned with the twins' drinks, presenting them on linen coasters. Your mother called to confirm she'll be meeting you at the gate in Paris. Is there anything else you need before takeoff? Before either twin could respond, Catherine interjected loudly. Perhaps some parenting advice or supervision requirements. Her laugh was sharp and practiced, designed to cut rather than express genuine amusement. The twins exchanged a glance that contained volumes, a silent communication system developed over a decade of shared existence. Zara's eyes flashed brief anger, while Zuri's expression counseled patience. Their hands found each other across the divider between their seats, fingertips touching briefly before returning to their respective armrests. The cabin continued filling with Global Airways premium customers, the air fragrant with expensive perfumes and the subtle scent of the airline's signature jasmine aromatherapy. Outside, ground crew prepared the massive A380 for its transatlantic journey. Inside, an entirely different kind of turbulence was brewing. I specifically requested not to be seated near children, Catherine announced as Miguel Hernandez, the senior flight attendant, passed her seat. His salt and pepper hair and commanding presence marked him as a veteran of international service. Is this how Global Airways treats its Platinum Elite members? Good afternoon, Ms. Whitman. I'd be happy to check the seating chart, but we're operating at full capacity today. Miguel replied professionally. First class is completely booked. Catherine's voice dropped to a stage whisper that remained perfectly audible. I don't pay $12,000 for a babysitting service. Can't you move them to economy where they belong? Miguel maintained his practiced smile, though his eyes momentarily flicked toward James Wilson, whose attention had shifted from his financial times to the unfolding drama. I assure you all our passengers have valid tickets for their assigned seats. Is there something specific I can assist you with before takeoff? Yes, you can explain your affirmative action upgrade policy, Katherine snapped, gesturing toward the twins. Some of us earned our way into first class. Zara turned a page in her quantum physics book, advanced reading even for adults, while Zuri made notes in the margins of her dog-eared copy of Toni Morrison's Beloved. Neither acknowledged Catherine's increasingly aggressive commentary, though their shoulders tensed slightly. Zara's leg began bouncing subtly under her tablet, a nervous habit she'd had since kindergarten. Zuri's breathing had become deliberately measured, 4 counts in, 4 counts out, the calming technique their mother had taught them. Miguel, could I please have a pillow? Zuri asked politely when the flight attendant finished with Katherine. Certainly, Ms. Taylor. Right away. Catherine's eyes narrowed at the respectful address. She watched Miguel retrieve a premium pillow and present it with a slight bow. Unbelievable, she muttered. They've got the staff trained to pretend they belong here. The cabin filled with the white noise of pre-departure activity, overhead bins closing, safety demonstrations being prepared, the distant sound of the jet bridge slowly disconnecting. Katherine rose abruptly to visit the lavatory, deliberately bumping Zara's armrest as she passed. Watch it, she hissed. Zara steadied her tablet without comment, though her knuckles whitened with the effort of restraint. When Katherine returned, she accidentally tilted her glass, sending water droplets onto Zuri's book. Oh, so clumsy of me, Katherine said with artificial sweetness. These seats are just so cramped nowadays. The first-class pods were, in fact, among the most spacious in commercial aviation, offering nearly 50 square feet of personal space per passenger. Davis Reynolds from 6C nodded sympathetically toward Katherine. They really should have an age minimum for premium cabins, he offered, establishing himself as an ally. I've had important work disrupted by children before. Exactly, Katherine agreed, gratified to find support. Some spaces should remain professional. James Wilson lowered his Financial Times newspaper, his expression darkening as he observed the interaction. Those girls have been perfectly quiet since boarding, he noted, his deep voice carrying authority without aggression. I can't say the same for everyone. The comment hung in the air, its target unmistakable. Katherine's cheeks flushed slightly, though she quickly recovered. Some of us are having actual business conversations, she retorted. Not everyone is on vacation. Amanda Peterson adjusted her position to better observe the developing situation, her hand hovering near her phone. The Hamiltons exchanged another concerned look, but like most passengers, they hesitated to directly intervene in the growing tension. In their seats, the twins maintained their composed exteriors, but an observer might have noticed Zuri's hand trembling slightly as she turned a page. Zara discreetly angled her tablet so its camera captured the ongoing interaction without being obvious, another protocol their mother had taught them. Document everything without escalation. These people think money can buy class, Katherine announced to her social media followers as she typed aggressively. Hashtag first-class problems. Hashtag standards matter. A flight attendant approached with a gentle reminder about preparing for departure. Katherine reluctantly put her phone in airplane mode, but continued her running commentary. I paid full fare for tranquility and luxury, she informed everyone within earshot. Not to endure someone's unsupervised children pretending to read books they can't possibly understand. Zara quietly highlighted a passage on quantum entanglement, while Zuri made annotations about Morrison's use of metaphor, both demonstrating comprehension well beyond Katherine's assumptions. The air in the premium cabin, despite its advanced filtration system, grew thick with unspoken discomfort and the simmering potential for confrontation. Excuse me. Katherine's manicured finger jabbed the call button for the third time in 15 minutes, the chime interrupting the pre-departure quiet. My champagne has gone flat. I need a fresh glass. Sophia approached with professional patience, though the corners of her eyes had begun to tighten with strain. I apologize. Ms. Whitman? I'll bring you a new glass immediately. While you're at it, Katherine added loudly, perhaps you could explain the airline's policy on unaccompanied minors in premium cabins. I wasn't aware Global Airways had become a glorified school bus. Sophia glanced briefly at the twins, who remained focused on their books despite the obvious reference to them. Zuri's hand had moved to her neck, unconsciously touching the spot where a locket from her mother usually rested, a self-soothing gesture when she felt anxious. Zara's leg bounced faster under her tablet, betraying her growing discomfort despite her composed expression. All of our passengers have valid tickets, Ms. Whitman. Our unaccompanied minor service ensures appropriate supervision for young travelers, Sophia explained, her voice level but lacking its earlier warmth. But who authorized them for first class? Katherine pressed, her voice rising. There must be some mistake. Did their tickets get mixed up with someone else's? Miguel approached, sensing Sophia's discomfort. Is there a problem I can assist with? Yes, Katherine declared. I'm trying to understand how these children ended up in first class. Their tickets must be fraudulent. No responsible parent would waste money putting kids in premium cabins. The twins exchanged another silent glance. Zuri's eyes held a question. Zara's answered with slight head movement. They'd been here before. Not precisely this situation, but similar enough to recognize the pattern. The underlying message was always the same. You don't belong in this space. Miguel's expression remained neutral despite the inappropriate comment. I can assure you all our passengers' documentation is thoroughly verified before boarding. Katherine snorted incredulously. Well, someone clearly failed at their job. They don't look like they belong here. The pointed emphasis on look hung in the air like a noxious cloud. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing the unmistakable subtext. James Wilson set down his newspaper completely, no longer pretending not to listen. Amanda Peterson unlocked her phone, keeping it ready but not yet recording. Margaret Hamilton whispered something to her husband, her expression increasingly troubled. Davis Reynolds from 6C, however, nodded slightly in agreement with Katherine, reinforcing their social alliance. I've flown over 2 million miles with Global Airways, Katherine continued, voice rising further. I know what first class should look like. This, she gestured dismissively toward the twins, is not it. Miguel's professional veneer remained intact, but his posture stiffened slightly. Ms. Whitman, I must ask you to lower your voice. All passengers in this cabin have equal rights to comfortable travel. Equal rights? Katherine laughed sharply. I paid $12,000 for this seat. You think these kids paid the same? Someone's grandmother probably works as a cleaner for the airline and pulled some strings. Zuri finally looked up, her expression calm but her voice revealing the slightest tremor. Our tickets are valid, ma'am. We're waiting for our mother who's completing some paperwork. She'll be joining us shortly. The statement was factually accurate but deliberately vague. Another strategy they'd been taught. Reveal only what's necessary. Maintain composure. Avoid unnecessary confrontation. Katherine's eyes widened at being directly addressed. Excuse me, did I ask you anything? Know your place and don't speak unless spoken to. The archaic phrase carried unmistakable historical weight that wasn't lost on anyone listening. James Wilson's expression hardened further, his jaw clenching visibly. Amanda's fingers hovered over her phone screen, now clearly ready to document what was unfolding. Ms. Whitman, Miguel interjected firmly. That comment is inappropriate. I must ask you to refrain from addressing other passengers in that manner. So now children can be rude to adults, but adults can't respond. Is that your policy? Katherine's voice had risen to a near shout, drawing attention from passengers in adjacent rows. Davis Reynolds leaned forward from 6C. She does have a point. Children should be seen and not heard in premium environments. His attempt at support only highlighted the archaic nature of Katherine's perspective, causing several other passengers to exchange troubled glances. Sophia approached with a fresh glass of champagne, hoping to diffuse the situation. Your champagne, Miss Whitman, will be taking off shortly. Perhaps you did not our entertainment selection during the flight. What I'd like, Katherine replied icily, is to enjoy the first-class experience I paid for without dealing with children who clearly don't understand proper behavior. She accepted the champagne without thanks, immediately taking a large swallow. Several nearby passengers had abandoned any pretense of not listening. The tension in the cabin had become a tangible presence, as substantial as the luxury surroundings. The twins had returned to their books, but their posture had changed, slightly more rigid, slightly more alert, as though preparing for something. Zara discreetly checked that her tablet was still recording, angling it slightly to better capture Katherine's increasingly agitated state. Zuri's fingers traced the edge of her book repeatedly, another self-soothing mechanism that most wouldn't notice. Miguel conferred briefly with Sophia, both glancing toward the twins with professional concern. The pre-departure announcement began, temporarily drowning out Katherine's complaints, but her expression made it clear she wasn't finished. The twins whispered briefly to each other, their composed expressions betraying no fear despite the escalating situation. They had been raised with specific protocols: maintain dignity, document everything, de-escalate when possible, alert authorities when necessary. "Remember what Mom always says," Zuri whispered, barely audible. "Document but don't engage," Zara confirmed. "I've got everything recorded. The incident. Please return your seats and tray tables to their upright positions." The standard announcement echoed through the cabin as final preparations for departure commenced. Zuri adjusted her glasses and leaned slightly toward Katherine. "Excuse me, ma'am. Would you mind lowering your voice a bit? I'm trying to finish this chapter before takeoff." The cabin fell silent. The polite request, delivered in Zuri's clear, educated voice, seemed to hang in the air between them. Katherine's face flushed crimson, the color spreading from her neck upward like rising mercury. Her pupils dilated visibly, and her breathing quickened, physical signs of the adrenaline surge that preceded her action. "Don't you dare tell me what to do," she hissed, leaning forward until the scent of champagne and expensive perfume created an overwhelming cloud. "Who do you think you are?" "I'm just asking politely," Zuri began, her voice steady despite the growing tension. The slap came without warning, the crack of palm against cheek silencing every conversation in the first-class cabin. Zuri's head snapped sideways from the impact, her glasses flying askew. The physical sensation was shocking. First numbness, then a spreading heat as blood rushed to the surface of her skin. The force rattled her teeth and momentarily blurred her vision. Most disturbing was the sensation of a stranger's hand on her face, the violation of personal space more jarring than even the pain itself. "Know your place," Katherine snarled, her voice trembling with adrenaline-fueled rage. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then the cabin erupted. Zara lunged across the divider, protective arms encircling her sister. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she felt dizzy, primal fear and protective instinct overriding their practiced composure. "Don't touch her," she cried out, her first genuine emotional display since boarding. Miguel rushed forward while Sophia gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. James Wilson rose halfway from his seat, mouth open in shock. The Hamiltons cried out in unison, Margaret's hands clutching at her chest as though she'd been the one struck. Amanda Peterson's phone was already recording, capturing Katherine's look of smug satisfaction as a bright red handprint bloomed across Zuri's dark cheek. Davis Reynolds from 6C suddenly looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat as though trying to physically distance himself from the assault he'd been socially aligned with moments before. "She was being disrespectful," Katherine announced to the shocked cabin, her voice unnaturally high. "Someone needed to teach her some manners." "You hit a child," Miguel stated, his professional demeanor cracking for the first time. "That's assault." "I disciplined a disrespectful minor," Katherine countered, though a flicker of uncertainty had entered her expression as she registered the unanimous horror surrounding her. If their parents won't do it, someone has to maintain standards. Zuri straightened slowly, one hand adjusting her crooked glasses while the other pressed against her stinging cheek. The red mark contrasted starkly against her brown skin, each finger outline clearly visible. Her eyes filled with tears that she refused to let fall. Another lesson learned early. Never let them see you break. "Security to first class, immediately." Sophia spoke urgently into her communication device, her voice shaking slightly. "Passenger assault incident involving a minor." Katherine rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. That's hardly assault. These kids need to learn how the real world works." Amanda's phone captured every word, the video already automatically uploading to her cloud storage. Her social media notification chimed softly as she live-streamed, "Happening now. Woman assaults child in first class. #first class assault. Ms. Whitman, please remain in your seat, Miguel directed firmly, positioning himself between Katherine and the twins. This incident will require documentation and possible removal from the flight. Removal? Katherine laughed incredulously, though the sound held a brittle edge. I'm the victim here. These children shouldn't even be in first class. They provoked me deliberately. Zara hadn't spoken since her initial protective outburst, focusing entirely on her sister. She produced a handkerchief from her blazer pocket and gently pressed it against Zuri's cheek. Her hands trembled visibly, betraying the effort it took to maintain composure. Are you okay? Zara whispered, her voice cracking slightly. It hurts, Zuri admitted in a whisper only her sister could hear, the first honest acknowledgement of her pain. But I'm okay, she blinked rapidly, fighting back tears that threatened her composure. Katherine's voice rose again. Security should remove these children, not me. They're clearly traveling under fraudulent pretenses. The captain's voice interrupted over the intercom. Flight attendants, please prepare for immediate departure. Actually, stand by for further information. The abrupt change indicated the cockpit had been notified of the incident. Airport security officers Garcia and Lopez appeared at the cabin entrance, directed by ground staff. What's the situation? Officer Lopez asked, taking in the charged atmosphere. That woman slapped my sister, Zara stated, her voice steadier now, though her arms remained protectively around Zuri. Unprovoked physical assault. She's lying, Katherine interjected immediately. These unaccompanied children have been disruptive since boarding. I merely responded to continued provocation. Amanda stood up. I have the entire incident recorded. The child asked politely for her to lower her voice, and she responded with physical violence. The security officers exchanged glances. Officer Garcia approached Zuri, kneeling to examine her face with appropriate concern. Are you all right, young lady? Do you need medical attention? I'm okay, thank you, Zuri replied softly. It stings a lot. The distinct mark of an adult hand remained clearly visible on her cheek, each finger outlined in angry red. In the coming minutes, it would darken to a deeper crimson as blood vessels beneath her skin responded to the trauma, physical evidence that would be impossible to deny. I can't believe what I just witnessed. James Wilson's deep voice broke the shocked silence. He stood fully now, his imposing height and tailored suit lending physical authority to his words. That woman assaulted a child for making a perfectly reasonable request. The first-class cabin had transformed from a space of luxury to a courtroom of public opinion, with passengers rapidly taking sides based on their own values and biases. She was just disciplining an unruly child, Davis Reynolds countered from 6C, though his voice lacked conviction and he avoided making eye contact with anyone. Kids today have no respect for adults. Unruly Tanzara, Amanda Peterson exclaimed incredulously, her phone still recording. Those girls have been perfectly behaved since boarding. Unlike some adults, she pointedly glared at Katherine. I was merely setting boundaries, Katherine insisted, her righteous indignation visibly faltering as she registered the overwhelming disapproval surrounding her. She glanced at Davis, seeking the ally she'd found earlier, but he had become suddenly fascinated with his Wall Street Journal. That's completely false, Margaret Hamilton said, her grandmotherly voice trembling with emotion. My husband and I have been watching. Those girls have been reading quietly the entire time. You've been the disruptive one. Robert Hamilton nodded vigorously. In 70 years of flying, I've never seen such unprovoked aggression toward a child. It's unconscionable. Katherine's eyes narrowed. Well, you wouldn't understand. Some of us have standards about who belongs in premium cabins. A divisive murmur rippled through the space as passengers processed her implication. Some looked uncomfortable but remained silent, creating a third category beyond direct support or condemnation, the bystanders whose silence itself represented a choice. A young professional woman in row 7, who had been silent until now, spoke up. I've been on the fence watching this, but hitting a child crosses every line. There's never an excuse for that. Amanda's phone chimed repeatedly as viewer counts climbed. Her live stream caption now read, Woman slaps black child in first class after child politely asks her to lower her voice. Hashtag first class assault, hashtag global airways. We got comments flooded in. OMG, did she really just hit a child? Charge her with assault. Those poor girls, they're being so brave. Someone get that Karen off the plane. This is straight-up racism disguised as standards. Competing voices emerge from the small factions supporting Katherine. We're not seeing the whole story. Children shouldn't be in first class unsupervised. What were they doing there anyway? Not everything is about race. Stop making it political. The captain's voice returned over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds. I've been informed of an incident in the first-class cabin. We'll be delayed while this matter is addressed. We apologize for any inconvenience. Katherine scoffed. This is ridiculous. We're delaying an international flight because someone finally stood up to entitled children. You struck a minor, James Wilson stated flatly. That's a federal offense on an aircraft. Oh, she barely touched her, argued Davis, though his defense had weakened considerably. His expression suggested he was reconsidering his social alignment as the severity of the situation became clear. Everyone's overreacting. Sophie approached the twins with ice wrapped in a linen napkin. This might help with the swelling, she offered gently to Zuri. I've documented the mark with our cabin camera for incident reporting. Katherine's face reddened further. I'm calling Thomas Reynolds right now. He's your CEO, and we play golf together at the Westchester Country Club. She fumbled with her phone, apparently searching for a contact. Please do, Miguel replied with unexpected calm. I'm sure the leadership team would be very interested in hearing about this incident directly. Zara had taken out her tablet and was typing rapidly, her face a mask of concentration. Zuri placed the ice pack against her cheek, wincing visibly at the contact. Under her breath, almost inaudible, she whispered, It really hurts, Z. I know, Zara whispered back. Mom will fix this. What are you doing now? Katherine demanded, noticing Zara's activity. Are you recording me without permission? That's illegal. I'm sending a message, Zara replied without looking up. To whom? Your little friends, good luck getting any sympathy. I have connections at this airline that you couldn't possibly understand. Katherine turned to address the cabin at large. This is why children don't belong in premium cabins. They don't understand proper behavior. An older man in business attire who had been quiet until now spoke up from row 4. Ma'am, I've been flying first class for 30 years, and those children have shown more maturity than you have. Perhaps you're the one who doesn't belong here. Amanda's live stream had reached 25,000 viewers, comments scrolling too fast to read. The hashtag first-class assault hashtag had begun trending in the New York area, spreading outward as more viewers shared the video. This is going to be on every news outlet by tonight, a passenger in 7D predicted, scrolling through his own phone. It's already all over Twitter. Good, Katherine replied defiantly, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. The world should know how Global Airways allows unaccompanied minors to harass legitimate first-class passengers. Davis Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in 6C, now physically leaning away from Katherine. Self-preservation instinct had clearly kicked in as he realized he'd aligned himself with someone committing assault on camera. I need to clarify that, while I think there should be age restrictions, I would never condone physical contact, he announced to no one in particular. The contrast between Katherine's flushed, angry countenance and the twins' composed demeanor couldn't have been starker. The girls sat with perfect posture, Zuri holding the ice pack to her cheek, Zara continuing to type on her tablet. Their dignity in the face of abuse was striking to everyone watching, both in the cabin and through Amanda's increasingly viral live stream. We need to follow assault protocol, Miguel whispered to Sophia as they conferred near the galley. Document the injury, secure witness statements, and prepare for possible removal. Sophia nodded, glancing concernedly toward the twins. Those poor girls, they're such regular flyers, always perfectly behaved. I served them on the London route last month. Zuri had her birthday celebration on board. Their mother arranged for a special cake with math equations in the frosting. I remember, Miguel replied. Very specific request. Strawberry macaron with differential equations. Not your typical kids. He straightened his uniform, composure returning as training took over. Let's handle this by the book. Too many witnesses for anything less. Junior flight attendant Marcus Chen checked the cabin management system, his expression changing subtly as he reviewed the twins' passenger profiles. Miguel, there's something unusual about their records. Executive-level flags on both profiles, highest priority status codes I've ever seen. Miguel and Sophia exchanged glances. That's odd for unaccompanied minors, Sophia murmured. Even VIP children don't usually have that level of flagging. They returned to the cabin where Katherine was growing increasingly agitated. I demand to speak with someone in authority, she insisted to Officer Lopez. Not just flight attendants and rent-a-cops. I want to speak to Thomas Reynolds immediately. Miss Whitman, I've already contacted our ground supervisor, Miguel informed her. They'll be boarding shortly to assess the situation. Good, Katherine snapped. Someone needs to address the real problem here, allowing unaccompanied minors to antagonize full-fare passengers. Sophia had moved to document Zuri's injury, taking photos with the cabin's incident recording device. I'm sorry about this, Miss Taylor, she said gently. We'll need these for the report. I understand, Zuri replied, her voice steady though her hands trembled slightly. Documentation is important for establishing facts. Katherine rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please, stop pretending she's some kind of victim. That's barely even red anymore. The mark on Zuri's cheek had, in fact, darkened considerably, the outline of Katherine's hand clearly visible against her brown skin. Sophia captured several angles, ensuring the evidence was undeniable. James Wilson turned in his seat. Ma'am, you struck a child hard enough to knock her glasses off. There are at least a dozen witnesses and multiple recordings. Perhaps you should stop digging yourself deeper. Do you know who I am? Katherine demanded. Voice rising again. I'm Katherine Whitman, Senior Managing Director at Apex Capital. I manage over $2 billion in assets and have been a Global Airways Platinum Elite member for 15 years. I personally know Thomas Reynolds and 3 board members of this airline. Miguel's company device chimed with an incoming message. He checked it, his expression changing subtly, eyebrows rising slightly, posture straightening almost imperceptibly. He showed Sophia the screen, whose eyes widened in response. Status urgent executive intervention inbound. Taylor twins incident escalated to highest level. Stand by for arrival. What's going on? Katherine demanded, noticing their exchange. Why are we still delayed? Either remove those children or let's depart immediately. I have meetings in Paris that can't wait for this nonsense to be resolved. A Global Airways representative is boarding to address the situation, Miguel informed her, his tone revealing nothing. Finally, Katherine said triumphantly, someone who understands the value of premium customers. Sophia approached Marcus, whispering instructions. Prepare the incident documentation package. All witness statements, photos, everything. Whoever's coming will want a complete record. But Miguel didn't respond to Katherine, instead checking on the twins again. Can I get you anything else? He asked them quietly. No, thank you, they replied in unison, their composed demeanor intact despite everything. Katherine's triumph shifted to confusion as she observed the crew's solicitous attention toward the girls. Why are you coddling them? They're the problem here. The cockpit door opened, and the captain emerged briefly, conferring with Miguel. He glanced toward the twins with a concerned expression before nodding and returning to the flight deck. This is completely ridiculous, Katherine announced to the cabin at large. An entire international flight delayed because someone finally stood up to entitled children. I'm going to have all of you reported for incompetence. Sophia and Miguel exchanged another glance, but maintained their professional demeanor. The company device in Miguel's hand chimed again, and this time both flight attendants straightened perceptibly, exchanging a look that contained volumes of unspoken communication. Executive arrival imminent, the message read. President Taylor boarding now. A representative will be with us momentarily, Miguel announced, his eyes briefly meeting the twins with an unreadable expression. The sound of determined footsteps approached from the jet bridge. The twins' perspective. Are you really okay? Zara whispered to her sister, voice low enough that only Zuri could hear. It hurts a lot more than I'm showing, Zuri murmured back, the ice pack doing little to soothe the burning sensation across her cheek. But I'm not going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. The twins had experienced discrimination before, but never so physically, so publicly. Their mother had prepared them with careful conversations about maintaining dignity in difficult situations, about not allowing others' ignorance to diminish their self-worth. Still, theory and practice were different things. I messaged Mom, Zara continued quietly. Sent the video too. Will she get here in time before they make us leave? Zuri asked, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through her composed exterior. She'll come, Zara assured her. Remember how fast she got to my science fair when those judges questioned my project? The memory brought a slight smile to Zuri's face despite the pain. Their mother had arrived like a force of nature, credentials in hand. When judges suggested the Zara's advanced algorithm must have been plagiarized, the same judges who'd praised identical work from white students suddenly had concerns about authenticity when presented by a black girl. Their academic achievements were extraordinary by any standard. Both had skipped 2 grades and participated in collegiate-level enrichment programs. Zara had recently published a paper on computational mathematics in a peer-reviewed journal, while Zuri had won national recognition for her literary analysis of civil rights literature. The pins on their blazers represented academic honors that most adults couldn't achieve. They'd flown first class dozens of times, accompanying their mother on business trips or traveling to academic competitions. The Global Airways Junior Ambassador pins they wore weren't decorative. They'd earned them through the airline's Educational Partnership Program, which recognized exceptional students and future leaders. Sophia approached again, kneeling beside their seats. "I just want you to know," she said softly. "We've had the pleasure of serving you on several flights. You've always been among our most courteous passengers, regardless of age." Thank you," Zuri replied, her composed demeanor intact despite the red mark still visible on her cheek. "Your mother has been notified," Sophia added, her expression revealing nothing more. Zara nodded slightly, exchanging a meaningful glance with her sister. Their tablet showed a message sent but not yet read. "My face feels like it's on fire," Zuri whispered when Sophia moved away. "Like someone pressed a hot iron against it." "I know," Zara replied, fury flashing in her eyes before she controlled it. "I wanted to hit her back. Is that terrible?" "No," Zuri admitted. "I wanted that too. But Mom always says that responding with the same behavior validates their actions." Zara finished. Their mother's lessons had been thoroughly internalized, repeated often enough to become reflexive even in crisis. Katherine was still arguing loudly with anyone who would listen. They must have used fraudulent upgrades or employee benefits they're not entitled to. There's simply no way children afford first-class tickets legitimately. The twins' expressions didn't change, but Zuri's hand found Zara's across the divider between their seats. The small gesture of solidarity went unnoticed by most passengers, but James Wilson observed it with a sad understanding in his eyes. 8 minutes since I messaged her," Zara whispered, checking their tablet again. "I know," Zuri replied, her stomach nodding with nervous anticipation. The girls had learned timing from their mother, how long processes took, how systems worked, how organizations responded to incidents. 8 minutes was approximately how long it would take for their message to be received, processed, and acted upon. They settled back in their seats, posture perfect, expressions serene despite everything. Katherine's voice intruded again. "Look at them sitting there pretending they belong. Those seats cost $12,000 each. You know they don't have that kind of money. They're probably using stolen credit cards or employee passes." Davis Reynolds had gone completely silent, no longer willing to associate himself with Katherine's increasingly explicit prejudice. Most other passengers looked increasingly uncomfortable with Katherine's escalating commentary. "Mom always says people reveal themselves through crisis," Zuri murmured to her sister. "And to let them finish the job," Zara added, a hint of something knowing in her expression. The tablet in Zara's hand lit up with an incoming message. Both girls glanced at it, their expressions unchanged except for the slightest relaxation around their eyes. 3 minutes, Zara said quietly. Zuri straightened her glasses, which still sat slightly askew from the impact of Katherine's slap. The ice pack had reduced the swelling, but the mark remained clearly visible, evidence of adult violence against a child simply for requesting basic courtesy. "I'm scared," Zuri admitted in a whisper only her twin could hear. "What if Mom doesn't come?" "She'll come," Zara assured her, though her own heart raced with uncertainty. "She always does." "We have a problem," Officer Lopez muttered to his partner. "Protocol for assault against a minor is clear, but without a guardian present to press charges." Officer Garcia nodded, eyeing the still argumentative Katherine. "The airline can file on behalf of unaccompanied minors in their care, but it gets complicated with international flights and jurisdiction issues." They stood at the threshold of the first-class cabin. Uncertain how to proceed, commercial aircraft existed in a complex legal territory, neither fully under local jurisdiction nor completely federal until actual flight. The girls seem remarkably composed, Lopez observed quietly. Almost like they've dealt with this before. That's the saddest part, Garcia replied. They probably have, just not usually this physical. Katherine had noticed their hesitation and seized upon it. See, even security recognizes there's no real issue here. Let's depart before we waste any more time on this nonsense. Ma'am, we're still evaluating the situation, Lopez stated firmly. Multiple witnesses report you struck a minor. I disciplined a disruptive child, Katherine countered. There's a difference. You have no authority to discipline someone else's child, Garcia pointed out, especially not physically. Katherine waved dismissively. Details, the real issue is unaccompanied minors disrupting premium cabins. I've already texted Thomas Reynolds about updating Global's policies. Amanda's live stream had reached 85,000 viewers, comments flooding in faster than anyone could read them. The hashtag Justice for Twins had joined hashtag First Class Assault in trending topics. Journalists had begun reaching out through social media, requesting permission to use the footage. We need a supervisor decision, Lopez said to Miguel. This is beyond standard security protocol. Miguel nodded, gesturing toward his company device. I've already escalated this. We're awaiting guidance. The pre-departure announcement system chimed again. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the continued delay. We're addressing a passenger incident and will provide more information shortly. Katherine threw up her hands in exasperation. This is absurd. A multi-million-dollar aircraft and hundreds of passengers delayed because no one will address the real problem. Children who don't belong in first class. Officer Garcia stepped closer to the twins. Are you sure you're all right? He asked Zuri. His voice gentler than his official demeanor had been. Yes, thank you, Zuri replied. My sister and I understand protocol requires documentation. Katherine snorted. Listen to that rehearsed response. They've obviously been coached on how to create situations like this. Ms. Whitman, Officer Lopez interjected firmly, I need to advise you that continuing to make unfounded accusations could complicate this situation further. Unfounded? Katherine laughed sharply. Look at them. Do they look like legitimate first-class passengers to you? The security officers exchanged uncomfortable glances, aware of the implications behind Katherine's persistent commentary. The Taylor girls are Global Airways junior ambassadors, Sophia stated clearly. They travel regularly in first class and have always been exemplary passengers. Junior what? Katherine scoffed. Another diversity program, I suppose. Lowering standards to check boxes. Amanda's live stream captured every word. Viewer count now surpassing 100,000. Media outlets had begun picking up the story, with aviation blogs and news sites posting preliminary reports based on the footage. My supervisor is requesting guidance on jurisdictional protocol, Officer Lopez said to Miguel. Since we're still at the gate, local authorities could be involved, or this could be handled federally. Our company protocol is clear regarding assault. Miguel replied to Diane, we're just awaiting confirmation from leadership on how to proceed. The security radio crackled with an incoming message. All units, be advised. Global Airways executive approaching Gate 27. Provide all necessary assistance. Both officers straightened immediately, exchanging surprised glances. Katherine, overhearing the transmission, smiled triumphantly. Finally, someone with actual authority. Now we'll get this resolved properly. She smoothed her hair and adjusted her designer outfit, clearly expecting vindication. The twins remained perfectly still, their expressions unchanged except for the briefest exchange of glances. Zuri adjusted her glasses again, while Zara closed her tablet case with deliberate precision. What if it's not Mom? Zuri whispered, almost inaudible. It will be, Zara replied. I feel it. The sound of determined footsteps grew closer. The first-class cabin fell into expectant silence as footsteps approached from the jet bridge. Katherine straightened in her seat, prepared to present her case to whoever represented airline authority. The woman who appeared in the doorway commanded attention without demanding it. Her tailored charcoal suit bore no flashy logos or ostentatious details, yet its perfect fit spoke of quality that didn't need announcement. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, and her only jewelry was a single strand of pearls and small diamond studs. She carried a leather portfolio embossed with the Global Airways logo, but otherwise bore no obvious markers of position or authority. Olivia Taylor moved with deliberate grace, her presence immediately altering the energy of the cabin. She paused at the threshold, dark eyes taking in the scene with measured assessment. Unlike Katherine's theatrical displays, her power resided in composed confidence that required no validation. The crew's reaction was subtle but unmistakable. Miguel straightened imperceptibly, while Sophia's posture shifted to formal attention. The security officers adjusted their stance, a reflexive response to recognize authority. These physical cues telegraphed what words had not yet confirmed. This was someone of significance. Katherine, focused on her own indignation, missed these signals entirely. She continued her complaints to anyone who would listen, gesturing dismissively toward the twins. This is exactly why children shouldn't be allowed in premium cabins without supervision. They've disrupted an entire international flight. Olivia proceeded slowly down the aisle, absorbing details with practiced efficiency. Her expression revealed nothing as she approached the focal point of the disturbance. She stopped first beside Amanda Peterson, whose phone still recorded the unfolding scene. "May I?" Olivia asked quietly. Amanda nodded, handing over her phone without hesitation. Olivia reviewed the footage briefly. Her only reaction a slight tightening around her eyes, a mother's controlled fury wrapped in professional restraint. Before she returned the device with a nod of acknowledgement, she continued forward, passing James Wilson, who inclined his head with subtle recognition. The Hamiltons watched with growing interest, Margaret's expression shifting towards something like satisfaction. Davis Reynolds suddenly became intensely focused on his newspaper, trying to physically shrink into his seat. Katherine remained oblivious to the newcomer's significance, continuing her tirade. "Someone needs to explain Global Airways' policy on unaccompanied minors in first class. This is completely unacceptable." Olivia stopped beside the twin seats, studying them with an expression that revealed nothing to casual observers. She noted the ice pack, the slightly askew glasses, the composed demeanor that masked what must be significant distress. "Are you all right?" she asked Zuri quietly, her voice controlled but with an undercurrent of maternal concern that only her daughters would fully recognize. "Yes, Mom," Zuri replied with equal restraint, though her eyes filled with the tears she'd been suppressing. The simple word Mom carried relief, confirmation, and security after the ordeal. A ripple of realization moved through the cabin. Passengers who had been watching the drama unfold suddenly understood they were witnessing something more significant than they'd initially realized. The connection between the elegant executive and the composed children became immediately apparent in their matching features: bearing and dignity. Olivia turned to Sophia. "Has medical attention been offered?" "Yes, ma'am," Sophia confirmed. "We've documented the injury and applied cold compress as recommended." Katherine finally noticed the newcomer, assessing her with a dismissive glance. "Excuse me, but who are you? I've been waiting to speak with Thomas Reynolds, or another executive with actual authority." Olivia didn't immediately respond, instead examining Zuri's cheek more closely. She took out her phone and captured several photos of the injury from different angles, her movements precise and deliberate. "Excuse me," Katherine's voice rose with indignation. "I asked you a question. Are you with customer relations because I have a serious complaint about these disruptive children?" Miguel stepped forward. "Ms. Whitman." Olivia raised a hand slightly, silencing him without words. The gesture wasn't theatrical or aggressive, just a quiet assertion of command that everyone except Katherine immediately recognized. "You struck this child," Olivia stated, her voice level as she finally addressed Katherine directly. The words weren't a question, but a confirmation of established fact. "I corrected disruptive behavior," Katherine replied defensively. "Since no actual guardian was present to maintain appropriate discipline, I am their mother," Olivia stated simply, the 4 words landing with precision. "And you physically assaulted my daughter on my aircraft." Katherine blinked rapidly, processing the dual revelation. "Your aircraft, what are you? A flight attendant supervisor? I need to speak with actual leadership. I've been a Platinum Elite member for 15 years. A ripple of discomfort passed through the cabin as passengers recognized the magnitude of Katherine's miscalculation. James Wilson shook his head slightly. Amanda's live stream captured every moment, viewer count now exceeding 150,000, with comments flooding in too quickly to display. "Ma'am, this is," Officer Lopez began. "I'll handle this," Olivia interjected calmly. "Thank you, officer." She turned back to Katherine, studying her with the same measured assessment she'd given her daughter's injury. "Ms. Whitman, correct Senior Managing Director at Apex Capital." Katherine straightened, pleased to be recognized despite the circumstances. "Yes, finally someone who understands the situation. These children have been disruptive since boarding, and when I attempted to address their behavior, you struck a child across the face with sufficient force to leave a visible mark." Olivia completed the sentence. "That's assault, Ms. Whitman, a federal offense on an aircraft." Miguel stepped slightly closer to Olivia, his voice lowered respectfully. "Madam President, the incident report has been filed according to protocol." The honorific hung in the air like a thunderclap. Katherine's self-satisfied expression faltered, her lips parting slightly as comprehension began to dawn. "President of what?" "The Flight Attendants Union." Sophia approached with a tablet displaying the incident documentation. "We've collected initial statements from witnesses. Madam President, security has been fully briefed." Understanding rippled through the cabin like a wave gaining momentum. Passengers exchanged glances, some with dawning recognition, others still connecting the dots. James Wilson nodded slightly to himself, as though a suspicion had been confirmed. The cockpit door opened, and Captain Reynolds emerged, approaching with formal respect. "Madam President, I apologize for the delay. We're standing by for your instructions regarding departure." Katherine's complexion had paled noticeably, the color draining from her face so rapidly that for a moment she appeared faint. "President, as in?" "Olivia Taylor," James Wilson supplied from his seat, no longer able to contain himself. "President and Chief Executive Officer of Global Airways." A collective intake of breath swept through the cabin. Amanda's livestream comments exploded with this new information. Viewers sharing the revelation in all caps messages that flew by too rapidly to read completely. "She's the CEO. Plot twist. OMG, the twins are her kids. Karma coming in hot." The look on her face right now is everything. Katherine's expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and finally horrified realization as the full magnitude of her actions crystallized in her mind. "But that's impossible. Thomas Reynolds is the CEO." "Thomas Reynolds retired 3 years ago," Olivia stated matter-of-factly. "I assumed leadership following a unanimous board vote after serving as Executive Vice President of Operations." She turned to examine Zuri's face again, her professional demeanor softening almost imperceptibly as she addressed her daughter. "The mark is still visible. We should document this properly before it fades." The twins maintained their composed expressions, though a hint of something, perhaps relief, perhaps vindication, showed in their eyes as they watched their mother take command of the situation. Their careful adherence to the protocols she'd taught them had created the space for this moment of accountability. Whispers cascaded through the cabin as passengers pieced together the full picture. The Global Airways Junior Ambassador pins now made perfect sense. The twins' comfort in first class, their poised demeanor, their immediate message when the incident occurred, all suddenly clicked into place. Katherine appeared physically smaller, her previously dominant posture collapsing inward as the implications of her actions became inescapably clear. I couldn't have known." "Known what?" "Ms. Whitman," Olivia asked with dangerous quietness, "that the children you assaulted were my daughters. Would that have made a difference in how you treated them?" The question hung in the air, its implication unmistakable and damning. Would Katherine have behaved differently if she'd known the twins' connection to power? The answer was obvious to everyone present. I never meant to," Katherine stammered, words failing her for the first time since boarding. "To what?" Olivia pressed. "To strike a child, to make racist assumptions about who belongs in first class, to delay an international flight with your behavior. Which part was unintentional?" "Exactly." Miguel approached again, respectfully interrupting. "Madam President, Global Legal Counsel Elena Morales is at the gate awaiting your instruction." Olivia nodded. "Have her board immediately." Katherine's face had drained of all color, her complexion now gray beneath her makeup. "Look, this has clearly been a misunderstanding. If I had known..." That's precisely the problem, Olivia interrupted. Your behavior should not depend on who you think someone is or what connections they might have. Basic human decency isn't reserved for people you perceive as important. Davis Reynolds had abandoned any pretense of reading his newspaper, now staring at Katherine with deliberate distance, clearly wanting no association with her position. Other passengers who had remained silent during her tirades now watched with undisguised interest as justice unfolded in real time. Amanda's live stream had reached 300,000 viewers, the story now being picked up by major news outlets. Social media erupted with the revelation. #Airline Boss Mom trending alongside the existing hashtags. The algorithm recognized a perfect viral storm. Unexpected revelation. Justice served. Powerful woman of color. Composed children facing discrimination. And pushed the content across platforms with increasing velocity. Officer Garcia cleared his throat. Madam President, do you wish to press charges on behalf of your daughter? All eyes turned to Olivia, whose measured calm had not wavered despite the extraordinary circumstances. I'll need to consult with my legal team and, more importantly, with my daughters. The twins exchanged a glance that contained volumes of unspoken communication. Their composed expressions revealed nothing to casual observers, but Olivia seemed to read something in their faces that informed her next words. For now, let's complete the documentation process properly. This incident will be addressed according to both airline policy and federal law. The revelation. I am Olivia Taylor, President and Chief Executive Officer of Global Airways. The formal introduction silenced the cabin completely. Katherine stared in disbelief, her mouth opening and closing without producing sound. These are my daughters, Zara and Zuri Taylor. They were traveling in advance of my scheduled departure to meet their grandmother in Paris. Olivia's voice remained level, but a controlled power resonated in every word. Instead, I'm now addressing an assault on a minor that occurred on my aircraft. Elena Morales, Global Airways Chief Legal Counsel, entered the cabin, her tailored suit and leather briefcase marking her professional status. She nodded respectfully to Olivia before taking in the scene with a lawyer's analytical gaze. Madam President, I've reviewed the preliminary incident report. We have multiple witnesses, video documentation, and physical evidence of assault on a minor. Olivia nodded. Thank you, Elena. She turned back to Katherine. Miss Whitman, do you understand the seriousness of what has transpired here? Katherine nodded numbly. Her previous arrogance evaporated completely. I never meant for this to escalate. If I'd known they were your daughter, that's not the point, Olivia interrupted firmly. The point is that no child, regardless of who their parents are, should be subjected to verbal harassment and physical assault while traveling. She looked around the cabin, addressing the passengers who had witnessed everything. Global Airways has a zero-tolerance policy for any form of violence or discrimination on our aircraft. This isn't about my position or my relationship to the victims. This is about basic standards of conduct that apply equally to everyone. Olivia's journey to her current position was well known in business circles. She had started as a flight attendant 20 years earlier, working her way through night school to earn her MBA while raising twin daughters as a single mother. Her subsequent rise through corporate ranks had been remarkable but hard-earned. Operations manager, regional director, vice president of customer experience, executive VP, and finally president and CEO 3 years ago when Thomas Reynolds retired. She had been the first Black woman to lead a major U.S. airline, her appointment making headlines throughout the industry. I chose not to accompany my daughters on this first leg because I had an emergency board meeting, Olivia explained to Elena, though her words were clearly intended for the cabin at large. They've flown alone dozens of times without incident. Katherine attempted to gather herself. Ms. Taylor. President Taylor or Madam President would be the appropriate address, Miguel corrected quietly. Madam President, Katherine amended, her voice hollow. I want to sincerely apologize for my behavior. It was completely unacceptable, and I take full responsibility. Olivia regarded her steadily. Your apology is noted, Ms. Whitman, but it doesn't erase what occurred. My daughter was assaulted. That has consequences. Regardless of your regret, she turned to Amanda Peterson, whose live stream continued despite her own shock at the unfolding drama. Would you be willing to provide a copy of your recording as evidence? It may be required for both company policy enforcement and potential legal proceedings. Of course, Amanda agreed immediately. I've already saved backup copies. Over 300,000 people have witnessed this live. Katherine paled further at this information. 300,000 my firm. My clients. Actions have consequences. Miss Whitman, Olivia stated simply. Something I've taught my daughters from an early age. She knelt beside the twins, her professional demeanor softening visibly as she addressed them directly. I am so proud of how you've handled yourselves today, she told them quietly, though her words carried in the hushed cabin. You maintained your dignity in a difficult situation. Zuri adjusted her glasses, which still sat slightly askew from the impact. We remembered what you taught us, Mom. Always take the higher ground, Zara added, but never allow anyone to diminish your worth. For a brief moment, the three Taylors were simply a mother and her children, connected by love and shared values rather than by corporate authority or viral circumstances. Olivia gently touched the mark on Zuri's cheek, her fingers trembling slightly, the only visible crack in her professional composure, before she stood and turned back to face Katherine, her expression hardening again. Ms. Whitman, do you know what disturbs me most about this incident? Katherine shook her head silently. It's that you believed this behavior was acceptable because you thought my daughters were less deserving of respect, less entitled to occupy premium space, less human. Olivia's words were measured but landed with precision. You assumed their presence was fraudulent solely based on how they look. That reveals something profound about your character that has nothing to do with your ignorance of their connection to me. The cabin remained silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone present. Even those who had initially supported Katherine now looked uncomfortable, forced to confront the implications of their assumptions. Davis Reynolds stared fixedly at his shoes, unwilling to meet anyone's eyes. Katherine's attempt to backpedal only highlighted Olivia's point. I would never have acted that way if I'd known who they were. Exactly, Pigeon, Olivia replied. And that's the problem. Your courtesy shouldn't depend on someone's status or connections. It should be the baseline you extend to everyone, especially children. We need to follow standard protocol, Olivia instructed Elena, her CEO persona firmly back in place. Document everything according to both company policy and federal requirements. Elena nodded, opening her briefcase to retrieve appropriate forms. I've initiated the passenger incident process. Given that this involves assault on a minor, we have specific additional protocols. Katherine watched this efficient, professional response with growing alarm, the full consequences of her actions becoming inescapably clear. Surely we can resolve this without formal procedures, she suggested desperately. I've acknowledged my mistake and offered my apology. This isn't about forgiveness, Ms. Whitman. It's about accountability. Olivia replied, her tone businesslike rather than vindictive. Global Airways has clear policies regarding passenger conduct, particularly violent behavior. Elena approached with a tablet. Ms. Whitman, this form acknowledges that you've been informed of the incident report. It's not an admission of guilt, simply confirmation that you understand the process being initiated. Katherine hesitated before reluctantly signing the digital form, her hand visibly trembling. What happens now? Multiple outcomes are possible, Elena explained with professional detachment. Global Airways has the authority to refuse transport to passengers who violate our conduct policies. Additionally, since this incident involves assault on an aircraft, federal authorities have jurisdiction. Olivia conferred briefly with the security officers, who had maintained a watchful presence throughout. Officers, I understand this creates jurisdictional questions since we're still at the gate. Would you prefer to handle this through airport police or refer to federal authorities? Given the circumstances and the video evidence, federal is appropriate, Officer Lopez replied. Air Marshal has been notified and is standing by. Katherine's desperate gaze darted around the cabin, searching for allies, but finding none. Davis Reynolds was now actively avoiding eye contact, his earlier support completely evaporated in the face of potential consequences. I have connections at your airline, she attempted weakly. Board members who've been my personal clients for years. Yes, I'm aware of your attempt to orchestrate a hostile takeover of Global Airways last year through Apex Capital, Olivia replied calmly. Your fund quietly acquired nearly 8% of our shares before our legal team blocked the maneuver. Catherine's shock was evident, her mouth opening slightly before closing without producing sound. How did you, It's my job to know who our adversaries are, Ms. Whitman, just as it's my job to ensure all passengers, especially children, can travel safely on our aircraft. The revelation of this corporate history added another dimension to Catherine's behavior. Her aggression toward the twins wasn't just random racism, it was potentially tied to corporate animosity toward their mother's company. Miguel approached with an update. Madam President, we've documented witness statements from passengers willing to provide contact information. Medical has confirmed the injury is minor, but clearly documented. Thank you, Miguel. Olivia turned to the twins. Zara, Zuri, I need to ask you formally if you wish to press charges. This is your decision, and I will support whatever you choose. The twins conferred briefly in whispers, a genuine moment of childhood amid their remarkable composure. Do we have to decide right now, Zuri asked, her voice revealing uncertainty that her composed expression had hidden. No, but if we want to press federal charges, it's easier to do immediately. Zara replied. I don't want her to go to jail, Zuri whispered. That seems too much for just a slap. But she needs consequences, Zara countered. She can't just do this and walk away. Zuri nodded. Maybe there's another way. They turned back to their mother. Zuri spoke first, her voice steadier. We think Ms. Whitman should face appropriate consequences, but we don't want to press criminal charges if there's another way to hold her accountable. Zara nodded in agreement. Maybe something that helps her learn why what she did was wrong, instead of just punishing her. Their thoughtfulness struck everyone who heard them. These weren't simply well-behaved children. They were extraordinarily thoughtful young people with a developed sense of ethics that many adults lacked. I understand, Olivia replied, genuine pride evident in her expression. Elena, what options do we have that respect my daughter's wishes while maintaining appropriate accountability? Elena considered this carefully. We can implement a comprehensive ban from Global Airways and partner carriers, with potential for review after completion of appropriate education and community service. This would be documented in our system and shared with appropriate regulatory bodies. Katherine looked horrified. A ban. But I have international business commitments that require regular travel. You should have considered that before assaulting a child in our first-class cabin, Elena replied matter-of-factly. Other carriers may accommodate you, though this incident will be reported to the Federal Aviation Administration's passenger conduct database. Olivia checked her watch, her expression shifting from maternal concern to corporate efficiency. We've delayed this flight long enough. I need to make a decision about how we proceed. She turned to address the cabin at large. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the continued delay. As president of Global Airways, I take full responsibility for ensuring your journey continues as promptly as possible while addressing this serious incident appropriately. The passengers listened attentively, most expressions sympathetic. We have two options, Olivia continued. We can remove Miss Whitman from the flight and depart immediately, or we can continue documenting this incident, which may delay us further but ensure more comprehensive accountability. James Wilson spoke up from his seat. Madam President, if I may suggest, perhaps Ms. Whitman should continue her journey on another carrier. Most of us witnessed what happened and would prefer to continue our journey without further disruption. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the cabin. I concur, added Margaret Hamilton. That poor child has been through enough without having to spend 8 hours across the Atlantic in the presence of her assailant, which Catherine's face reddened with humiliation as passengers openly discussed her removal. This is completely disproportionate to what actually occurred, she protested, though her voice lacked conviction. What actually occurred is that you struck a child across the face with sufficient force to leave a mark, simply because she politely asked you to lower your voice, Amanda stated, her live stream still active. Over 300,000 people have witnessed it. Olivia made her decision. Ms. Whitman will be removed from this flight. Elena will complete the documentation process in the terminal while the flight departs. She turned to the security officers. Please escort Ms. Whitman to the terminal where she can retrieve her checked luggage. Elena will accompany you to complete the necessary paperwork. Katherine stood shakily, the fight completely gone from her demeanor. My connecting flight in Paris will need to be rebooked with another carrier. Olivia finished firmly. Your Global Airways Platinum Elite status is suspended, effective immediately, pending review by our Passenger Conduct Committee. Please, Katherine whispered urgently to Elena as they moved through the jet bridge toward the terminal. There must be some way to resolve this without formal documentation. I have crucial meetings in Paris tomorrow morning that could determine my firm's entire European strategy. The live stream had ended, but the aftermath continued unfolding with brutal momentum. Her phone buzzed continuously with notifications, social media alerts, news mentions, and increasingly messages from colleagues and clients who had already seen the viral video. Ms. Whitman, you physically assaulted a minor on an aircraft, Elena replied, her voice professionally detached. That has consequences beyond missing your meetings. The terminal's harsh fluorescent lighting seemed to expose Katherine's situation with merciless clarity. Gone was the dimmed, exclusive ambiance of first class, replaced by the democratic brightness that illuminated everyone equally. Other travelers stared as they passed, some with vague recognition, others simply noting the security officers flanking a clearly distressed woman. Katherine's desperation mounted as reality crashed through her denial. Look, I made a terrible mistake. I acknowledge that completely. What if I made a substantial donation to the Airline's foundation? $50,000, $100,000, $250,000. Each rejected figure came with increasing panic in her voice, the financial escalation revealing both her wealth and her growing understanding of the severity of her situation. Elena stopped walking, turning to face Katherine directly. Are you attempting to bribe a corporate officer? No. God, no, of course not. Katherine backpedaled quickly, real fear flashing in her eyes. A gesture of goodwill, to demonstrate my sincere regret, to show I understand the gravity. Global Airways doesn't accept payments in exchange for overlooking passenger misconduct, Elena stated flatly. That would violate both our ethics policies and federal regulations. Katherine's phone chimed with an incoming call, her firm's managing partner, according to the display. Her hand trembled so violently she nearly dropped the device as she declined the call. Not yet ready to face that conversation. My entire career is imploding in real time, she whispered, more to herself than Elena. 15 years building my reputation at Apex, gone in seconds because I lost my temper with a child. Her voice cracked on the last word, the first sign that she was beginning to understand the moral, not just professional, implications of her actions. Perhaps you should have considered potential consequences before striking a child, Elena observed without sympathy. They reached the terminal's main concourse, where a small crowd had already gathered, airport staff who had heard about the incident through internal communications, passengers from other gates who recognized Katherine from the rapidly spreading video. Oh God, that's her, someone whispered audibly. The woman who slapped the CEO's daughter. Did you see how hard she hit that poor child? Katherine's face burned with humiliation as she registered the whispers and stares, her designer outfit and expensive accessories, status markers that had previously signaled her importance, now seemed like a costume, drawing additional attention she desperately wanted to avoid. Is there somewhere more private we can complete this process? She asked Elena, voice barely audible. We can use a conference room near the gate, Elena conceded, showing a hint of professional mercy despite her clear disapproval. As they walked, Katherine's phone continued its relentless notification symphony. She glanced down, unable to resist, and saw headlines already forming across news sites. Executive slaps child in first class. Discovers victim is airline CEO's daughter. Global Airways CEO removes passenger after assault on her children. Wall Street manager faces consequences after first-class incident goes viral. Her hand shook so badly she nearly dropped the phone. They're using my name, my company. This is going to destroy me professionally. I'll never work in finance again. Ms. Whitman, while I understand you're concerned about your professional reputation, I'd like to remind you that a 10-year-old child was physically assaulted today. Perhaps your priorities need recalibration. They entered a small conference room where Officer Lopez waited with additional documentation. Katherine sank into a chair, her designer handbag slipping, forgotten to the floor with a soft thud. She stared at it for a moment, the $4,000 accessories she'd purchased to project success and authority now lying ignored on airport carpet. My entire company has a zero-tolerance policy for behavior that reflects poorly on the firm, she said hollowly. Our ethical conduct clause is explicit. Any public behavior that damages the company's reputation is grounds for immediate termination. As is ours, Elena replied, arranging documents on the table. Katherine's phone rang again. Same caller. This time she answered, her voice struggling for professional composure. Richard, I can explain. Her face crumpled as she listened, the blood draining from her complexion. Yes, I understand. Yes, that was me in the video. I know it looks. She fell silent again, listening. I see. Yes, of course. I understand. When she ended the call, her complexion had gone ashen. I've been placed on administrative leave pending review by the Ethics Committee. They're calling an emergency board meeting tonight to discuss my separation package. Elena made a note on her tablet without comment. You don't understand what this means, Katherine continued, her voice hollow. In finance, administrative leave is code for cleaning out your desk. They just need legal to review the termination paperwork before making it official. For the first time, genuine regret rather than self-preservation seemed to motivate her words. Those girls didn't deserve that. No child deserves that. I don't know what came over me. It was like watching someone else use my body to do something I'd never. She trailed off, staring at her own hands as though they belonged to a stranger. Elena studied her for a moment, professional detachment giving way to clinical interest. Your actions revealed something important about your character, Mrs. Whitman. The question now is whether you learn from this revelation or merely regret being caught. Katherine's phone chimed with another notification, a news alert with her own name in the headline, accompanied by a still image captured from the viral video. The moment of impact was frozen in high definition, her hand connecting with Zuri's face, the child's glasses flying askew. The shock registered in everyone's expressions. What would President Taylor want me to do? Katherine asked quietly after a long moment of staring at the image of herself. To make this right, not just to save my career, but to fix what I did. That's not for me to say, Elena replied. But genuine accountability generally starts with accepting consequences rather than trying to escape them. Officer Lopez pushed a form across the table. Ms. Whitman, this acknowledges your removal from Flight 447 for violation of Global Airways' passenger conduct policies. Your signature here confirms you understand the temporary travel restriction while the Passenger Conduct Committee completes its review. Katherine signed, her signature barely recognizable compared to her usual confident scrawl. What happens next, she asked, voice small. You will be notified of the committee's decision within 7 business days. Elena explained. Given the circumstances and evidence, a lifetime ban is likely, though President Taylor indicated she would consider her daughter's request for proportional response. And professionally, that's between you and your employer. Elena replied. Global Airways has no control over how Apex Capital chooses to address your behavior, though given the public nature of the incident, I imagine they're discussing it currently. As if on cue, Katherine's phone displayed an email notification from Apex Capital's PR department. Press release draft. Whitman's separation. Urgent review needed. She stared at it, the magnitude of consequences finally penetrating her defensive shell. I've destroyed everything, she whispered. 15 years of building my career. Gone because I couldn't control my temper for 5 minutes on a plane. The realization seemed to physically alter her, shoulders slumping, spine curving inward, the carefully constructed facade of power and privilege crumbling visibly. For the first time, Elena saw something genuine in Katherine's expression, not just fear of consequences, but authentic recognition of her actions. Those children showed more dignity in 5 minutes than I've managed in 15 years of corporate leadership, Katherine admitted, a tear finally breaking through her perfect makeup. What does that say about me? Perhaps that's the question you should be focusing on, Elena replied, her tone softening slightly. Rather than how to escape consequences, the twins' dignity back on the aircraft, pre-departure procedures had resumed. The twins sat quietly in their first-class pods, composed and dignified despite everything they had experienced. How's your face? Zara whispered, leaning across the divider between their seats. It really hurts, Zuri admitted, touching her cheek gently. Like someone pressed a hot iron against it. The ice helps a little, but not much. The admission, made only to her sister, Contrasted with the composed exterior she maintained for others, Zuri could still feel the exact shape of Katherine's hand on her face, each finger a separate line of pain against her skin. James Wilson approached their seats, his expression respectful. I just wanted to say how impressed I am by how you both handled that situation. Many adults wouldn't have shown such composure. Thank you, the twins replied in unison. Our mother taught us that dignity isn't determined by how others treat you, Zuri explained, but by how you respond to treatment. She's clearly taught you well, James replied with genuine admiration. I have daughters about your age. I hope they would show the same grace under pressure. The twins smiled politely, neither seeking nor needing validation, but accepting it with characteristic poise. Once James returned to his seat, Zara reached across the divider and squeezed her sister's hand. You were so brave, she whispered. I almost cried. Zuri confessed. When Mom first arrived, I almost broke down completely. I know. I saw it in your eyes. But you didn't. You stayed strong. Only because you were right there with me, Marcy. Amanda approached next. Her live stream ended, but her professional interest evident. That was incredibly brave, standing your ground like that. A lot of kids would have been in tears. It wasn't our first experience with discrimination, Zara acknowledged matter-of-factly. Just the first time it became physical. This simple statement hung in the air, profound in its implication. These children had faced bias before, had developed coping mechanisms and responses, a reality many of the white passengers could scarcely imagine. Well, you've become quite famous in the last hour, Amanda informed them with a gentle smile. Over 500,000 people watched that live stream, and it's still being shared. The video's already been picked up by major news outlets. The twins exchanged a glance, their identical features communicating complex thoughts without words. We don't really want to be famous for this, Zuri admitted with unexpected vulnerability. We'd rather be known for our academic work. The Mathematics Olympiad, James recalled. You mentioned placing first and third nationally. Zara nodded, relaxing slightly at the shift toward comfortable territory. Zuri actually figured out a new way to calculate prime number distributions that our math professor said was really creative. I'm more interested in how math works in the real world, like with computers and stuff. The simplified explanation, more age-appropriate than their earlier technical descriptions, revealed that beneath their exceptional qualities, they were still children processing a traumatic experience in real time. James looked genuinely impressed. That's extraordinary. You must be, 10 years old? 10 and a half, they corrected simultaneously, then smiled at their identical response, a brief glimpse of their underlying childhood despite their unusual maturity. Sophia approached with fresh beverages. We'll be taking off shortly. Is there anything else you need? No, thank you, Miss Rodriguez, Zuri replied. We appreciate your help earlier. Sophia's professional demeanor softened visibly. You handled a very difficult situation with remarkable maturity. Your mother has every reason to be proud. As Sophia moved away, Margaret Hamilton approached from across the aisle, her elderly face creased with grandmotherly concern. I just wanted to make sure you're all right, dear, she said to Zuri. That woman's behavior was absolutely appalling. I'm fine, thank you, Zuri assured her, though she unconsciously touched her cheek again, the skin still hot and tender. The mark will fade. Robert Hamilton joined his wife. In my 70 years, I've seen discrimination take many forms, but I've rarely seen such composure in the face of it. You young ladies are extraordinary. The twins accepted these comments with modest grace, neither performing false humility nor basking in the attention. Their dignity remained their most striking quality, a poise that transcended their years without erasing their fundamental humanity. When the Hamiltons returned to their seats, Miguel made a final check of the cabin before departure. Ms. Zuri, your mother asked me to ensure you're comfortable continuing your journey. I want to personally assure you that the entire crew is at your disposal should you need anything. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. We're fine continuing as planned, Zara confirmed, though her protective glances toward her sister betrayed lingering concern. Katherine's now empty seat stood as a silent testimony to consequences. Her designer carry-on had been removed, her presence erased from the flight manifest. The twins looked at the vacant space briefly before returning to their books, refusing to allow the incident to dominate their thoughts. Passengers throughout the cabin watched them with new understanding. These weren't simply children who happened to have a powerful mother. They were exceptional young people in their own right, with accomplishments and character that would have been impressive at any age. Davis Reynolds, who had initially supported Katherine, now stared at his newspaper without reading it, occasionally glancing at the twins with what appeared to be shame. The contrast between his initial alignment with prejudice and his current discomfort created its own silent lesson about complicity. When the cabin was briefly empty of hovering adults, Zuri's composure finally cracked slightly. "I wish Mom was coming with us," she whispered to her sister, her voice catching. "I feel kinda shaky inside." Zara immediately reached across the divider, taking her twin's hand. "I know. I feel it too. Like our insides are still catching up with what happened." "Mom says that's normal," Zuri replied. "Your body keeps responding even after the danger is gone. Fight or flight chemicals." "Fight, flight, or freeze," Zara corrected gently. "We kinda did all three." This observation brought a genuine smile to Zuri's face, briefly transforming her back into a typical 10-year-old despite everything. "We froze, then you almost fought, then the lady had to flight." The small wordplay, silly but comforting, allowed a moment of childhood to break through their exceptional composure. They giggled quietly, a private twin moment amid the public drama they'd endured. As the aircraft finally pushed back from the gate, Zuri reached for her sister's hand again across the divider. The small gesture of solidarity went largely unnoticed. A private moment between siblings who had faced adversity together and emerged stronger for it. "Mom would say this is a teachable moment," Zara whispered. Zuri nodded. "For everyone involved." Outside the oval window, New York fell away beneath them as the massive A380 climbed through afternoon clouds. The twins watched the city recede, the physical distance a metaphor for the emotional space they were creating between themselves and the incident. They had maintained their dignity through crisis, just as their mother had taught them. Now they could process the experience privately, on their own terms, as the aircraft carried them toward their Parisian destination. Formal removal in the terminal. Katherine Wissetman stood beside her hastily removed luggage, Global Airways documentation clutched in one hand, phone continuously buzzing in the other. The designer suitcase that had been destined for the elegant shops of Paris now seemed like an artifact from a different life, one that had ended approximately 47 minutes ago. "These forms confirm your removal from Flight 447 and the suspension of your loyalty status," Elena explained methodically. "This document outlines the appeals process, though, as mentioned earlier, video evidence makes successful appeal unlikely." Katherine signed each form mechanically, her earlier arrogance completely evaporated. "What happens now? How do I get to Paris for my meetings?" "You're free to book travel with another carrier," Elena replied. "Though I should mention that the FAA passenger conduct database is accessible to all major airlines. Some may choose to deny boarding based on today's incident." The terminal bustled with normal airport activity around them, travelers rushing to gates or waiting in crowded seating areas. A few people glanced at Katherine with vague recognition, the viral video having spread far enough that her face was becoming known. "Is there some kind of VIP lounge where I could wait?" Katherine asked, uncomfortable with the public exposure. "I need to try rebooking on another airline." "I believe your Platinum Elite status has been suspended," Elena reminded her. "But there are public seating areas throughout the terminal." The clinical detachment of this response made Katherine flinch visibly. Until today, she had been accustomed to special treatment, expedited service, and deferential responses. The sudden withdrawal of those privileges represented a tangible first consequence. Through the large terminal windows, Katherine watched as Flight 447 finally began its taxi toward the runway. The massive A380 moved with stately grace, carrying all the passengers who had witnessed her humiliation toward their Paris destination without her. Her phone rang again, another call from her firm. Katherine answered with resignation, her voice hollow. "Yes, Richard, I understand. Yes, I've seen the news coverage. I know." She listened for several minutes, her expression growing increasingly bleak. "Mandatory leave. Ethics review. Public statement distancing the firm. I understand. Yes." I'll come to the office tomorrow to clean out my desk. When she ended the call, Elena was watching her with clinical interest. Employment consequences. Katherine nodded numbly. Termination, effective immediately. The firm is issuing a statement condemning my actions and emphasizing their commitment to diversity and inclusion. Actions have consequences. Ms. Whitman. So everyone keeps saying, Katherine replied bitterly, though the fight had gone out of her voice. As they completed the final documentation, airport police approached, not the security officers from earlier, but actual uniformed law enforcement. Katherine Whitman, one officer inquired. She nodded warily, her stomach tightening with fresh dread. We've received a complaint regarding an assault on an aircraft. We need to take your statement. Elena stepped forward. Officers, Global Airways has fully documented this incident. We can provide all necessary evidence, including video recording and witness statements. Thank you, but we still need Ms. Whitman to come with us to complete a formal police report. The alleged victim is a minor, which elevates this to a potential criminal matter. Katherine's face, already pale, went completely white. Criminal, but I've already been removed from the flight. My career is over. Isn't that enough? The officer remained professional but firm. Assault is a criminal offense. Ma'am, the fact that it occurred on an aircraft and involved a minor adds additional legal complications. We need you to come with us now. Elena handed Katherine a business card. This has contact information for Global Airways legal department. You may need it for future reference. As the police escorted Katherine away, her designer luggage rolling awkwardly behind her, terminal onlookers began to recognize her from the viral video. Whispers followed her departure. That's her, the woman who slapped that child in first class. The one whose mother turned out to be the airline CEO. Talk about karma coming full circle. Katherine's phone buzzed with a news alert featuring her own corporate headshot side by side with an image captured from the viral video. Wall Street executive removed from flight after assaulting CEO's daughter. The contrast between the images was stark. Her professional portrait showing confident poise. The viral screenshot capturing raw, ugly rage. Both were equally her. A realization that struck with devastating clarity as police officers guided her toward their office. Through the terminal windows, she watched Flight 447 accelerate down the runway, lifting gracefully into the afternoon sky. The aircraft's ascent seemed to mirror the trajectory of the viral video that was simultaneously destroying her career, both rising with unstoppable momentum, leaving her firmly grounded with the consequences of her actions. I need to call my attorney, she said quietly to the officers. You'll have that opportunity after we've taken your statement. One replied. Am I under arrest? Katherine asked, the words feeling surreal as they left her mouth. Not at this time, ma'am. We're just taking your statement regarding the incident. The not at this time hung in the air between them, an ominous suggestion of possibilities to come. Katherine Whitman, Harvard MBA, Senior Managing Director, Platinum Elite Frequent Flyer, was now being escorted by police through a public terminal, trailing a designer suitcase behind her like the remnants of a shattered identity. Flight continuation and reflection. At 37,000 feet above the Atlantic, the first-class cabin had settled into the rhythm of long-haul travel. The twins had adjusted their seats into a comfortable position, tablets displaying their respective reading materials, advanced mathematics for Zara, comparative literature for Zuri. Sophia approached with the premium meal service. We have pan-seared salmon with asparagus or filet mignon with truffle mashed potatoes. What would you prefer? Salmon, please, Zuri requested, her appetite returning now that the adrenaline of the confrontation had subsided. The same for me, Zara added, and maybe some extra lime for the water. As Sophia prepared their meal settings, passengers throughout the cabin continued casting occasional glances toward the twins. The incident had created an unusual dynamic. These young passengers had become the focal point of communal concern and admiration. Your mother will be boarding her flight in about 3 hours, Miguel informed them during a cabin check. She asked me to remind you that your grandmother will be waiting at the gate in Paris and to call her when you land. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, Zara replied politely. James Wilson approached their row again, pausing respectfully. I hope I'm not interrupting your meal, but I wanted to share something. My daughters are following your story online. They've seen the video. They wanted me to tell you they think you're both incredibly brave. Zuri smiled slightly. That's very kind of them. We don't feel particularly brave, though. That's often the nature of true courage, James observed. It doesn't announce itself. As he returned to his seat, the twins exchanged a glance that contained volumes of unspoken communication. For all their composure, they were still children processing a traumatic experience. Do you think Mom will change her mind about us traveling alone? Zara asked quietly, voicing the concern they'd both been harboring. Zuri considered this, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. I hope not. One person's behavior shouldn't restrict our independence. That's what Mom would say, Zara agreed with a smile. But I bet she'll fly with us next time, just to make sure we're okay. Zuri added realistically. Throughout the cabin, the incident had sparked thoughtful conversations among passengers. The Hamiltons discussed how discrimination had evolved over their lifetime, more subtle perhaps, but still present. Amanda exchanged messages with colleagues about corporate responsibility and viral accountability. Even Davis Reynolds, who had initially supported Katherine, sat in contemplative silence, perhaps reconsidering his own biases and complicity. I keep thinking about what happened, Zuri whispered to her sister when they were relatively private. Not just the slap, but how quickly everything changed when Mom arrived. You mean how Ms. Whitman's behavior changed? Zara asked. Exactly. She only respected Mom because of her position, not because of basic human dignity. Zuri adjusted her glasses, which still sat slightly askew despite her attempts to straighten them. It makes me wonder how many people are only treated with respect because of status. Or how many aren't, because they lack it, Zara added thoughtfully. Remember when that science judge thought my algorithm was copied? But then when Mom showed up with her credentials, suddenly I was impressive instead of suspicious. Zara nodded. Same pattern. It was a profound observation for children their age. Though consistent with the exceptional intellect they demonstrated throughout, their mother had raised them not just with academic excellence, but with ethical awareness beyond their years. Mom always says power reveals character rather than creating it, Zuri reflected. Ms. Whitman showed who she really was before she knew who we were. And we showed who we are too, Zara pointed out. We didn't need Mom's position to maintain our dignity. This realization seemed to comfort both girls. Their response to discrimination hadn't depended on their mother's authority. They had maintained composure and followed proper protocols based on their own character, not external protection. I'm still kind of scared. Though, Zuri admitted in a whisper only her sister could hear. What if it happens again somewhere Mom can't come rescue us? Then we handle it the same way, Zara replied with quiet confidence. Document everything. Maintain dignity. Tell the truth. But it hurts, Zuri said, touching her cheek again. Not just physically. I know, Zara acknowledged, reaching for her sister's hand. Mom says that's normal too. That it's okay to feel hurt when someone treats you badly. The massive A380 continued its journey eastward, engines humming with reassuring constancy as darkness fell over the Atlantic. Inside the first-class cabin, soft reading lights created islands of illumination where passengers pursued their individual activities. The twins eventually settled into their own pursuits, Zara working through complex mathematical proofs, Zuri analyzing literary symbolism. Their remarkable focus allowed them to process the incident while continuing their intellectual growth, compartmentalizing without denying the experience. Occasionally one would glance at the other, checking silently on her twins' well-being. These looks contained the wordless understanding that only identical siblings share, a connection forged in shared DNA and strengthened through shared experience. I'm proud of us, Zara said simply as the flight continued through the night. Me too, Zuri replied, her hand unconsciously touching her cheek, which still bore the fading outline of Katherine's hand. Mom was right about documenting everything, and about maintaining dignity, and about letting people reveal themselves. The lessons their mother had taught them had proven valuable in unexpected ways. The incident that began with discrimination had transformed into a validation of their upbringing and character. Outside their windows, stars shone with the clarity only visible at cruising altitude, distant and unchanging. Below, endless waves rolled beneath clouds illuminated by moonlight. The symbolism wasn't lost on the twins, their own journey continuing despite turbulence. their course steady despite unexpected challenges. They had quite literally risen above the confrontation, maintaining their trajectory toward their destination both physically and metaphorically. Breaking news in the aviation industry, the CNN anchor announced as Flight 447 crossed the mid-Atlantic. A shocking incident aboard a Global Airways flight has gone viral after a passenger was filmed slapping a child in first class, only to discover the children were the daughters of Olivia Taylor, the airline's president and CEO. The story had exploded across media platforms, each outlet taking a slightly different angle on the incident. CNN focused on the corporate accountability angle. CEO takes immediate action against passenger who assaulted her child. Fox News highlighted the business implications. Apex Capital executive faces termination after viral incident. MSNBC emphasized racial elements, viral video highlights, ongoing discrimination in premium travel spaces. Social media platforms experienced unprecedented engagement metrics around the hashtags #FirstClassAssault and #AirlineBossMom. With users sharing personal stories of similar experiences, my son and I were questioned 3 times about our first-class tickets last month. This happens constantly to Black travelers. #FirstClassAssault. As a flight attendant, I've witnessed this kind of entitlement regularly. Glad someone finally faced consequences. #AirlineBossMom. Those girls showed incredible composure. Their mother must be raising them with extraordinary values. #DignityWins. A vocal minority attempted to defend Katherine. Though their voices were increasingly drowned out, we're not seeing what happened before the video started. There could be more context. First class isn't really appropriate for unaccompanied minors. Cancel culture claims another victim. One mistake shouldn't end someone's career. These defenses were quickly overwhelmed by counter-arguments and evidence from multiple witnesses who had been aboard Flight 447. Amanda Peterson's live stream footage had been picked up by major networks, with experts dissecting Katherine's body language and the twins' remarkable composure. Body language expert Dr. Marcus Chen appeared on Good Morning America. Notice how the twins maintained perfect posture even after the assault. This suggests they've been taught specific protocols for handling discrimination. The aggressor, meanwhile, displays classic dominance behaviors until the moment of revelation, when her entire physical demeanor collapses. Apex Capital moved with unprecedented speed to distance themselves from Katherine. Issuing a statement within hours of the incident, Apex Capital is aware of the incident involving Katherine Whitman. Her actions do not reflect our firm's values or standards of conduct. Ms. Whitman's employment has been terminated, effective immediately. We are committed to fostering an environment of respect and inclusion, both within our organization and in our interactions with the public. The financial impact spread beyond Katherine's personal career. Apex Capital's stock dipped 2.3% as investors reacted to the negative publicity. Meanwhile, Global Airways experienced a 1.8% increase, a market reaction that financial analysts attributed to positive perception of Olivia Taylor's leadership. Investors respond to decisive action and values-based leadership, explained market analyst Jennifer Wu on Bloomberg TV. Taylor's handling of this incident demonstrated both, reinforcing confidence in her management approach. Davis Reynolds, the businessman from 6C, who had initially supported Katherine, found himself facing unexpected personal consequences when someone recognized him from Amanda's live stream. His support for Katherine's discriminatory behavior, though brief, was enough to trigger a social media investigation that connected him to his investment firm. By evening, his company had issued a statement. Davis Reynolds' personal views do not reflect our corporate values. We are investigating the matter and will take appropriate action. The incident had transformed from a personal confrontation to a cultural referendum on privilege, accountability, and consequences in the social media age. Everyone involved, from Katherine to the twins, from crew members to bystanders, was being analyzed, judged, and categorized by millions of strangers who had not been present but now felt intimately connected to the unfolding drama. The twins themselves became the subject of fascinated public interest, though Olivia Taylor's office quickly issued a statement requesting privacy for her minor children. While we appreciate the public's support, we ask that media respect the privacy of President Taylor's daughters. They are minors who have already experienced a traumatic incident. President Taylor will address media questions at an appropriate time. This request was largely respected by mainstream outlets, though social media users continued to celebrate the twins' composure and dignity. Their academic achievements were highlighted by educational organizations who had previously recognized them, creating a more positive narrative alongside the viral assault video. By the time Flight 447 began its descent toward Paris, the incident had transcended a simple passenger confrontation to become a cultural moment, a case study in consequences, accountability, and the complex intersection of race, class, and power in American society. 2 weeks after the incident, Olivia Taylor addressed Global Airways' quarterly leadership meeting. The executive boardroom fell silent as she took her position at the podium. "What happened to my daughters could have happened to any children traveling on our aircraft," she began, her voice steady and authoritative. "The difference is that my daughters had the protection of connection to power. Most don't." The executives listened attentively as Olivia outlined a comprehensive initiative born from the incident. "Today we're launching the Dignity in Travel program, a system-wide approach to preventing discrimination and ensuring all passengers, regardless of age, race, or background, receive equal respect aboard our aircraft." The program included several key components. First, enhanced crew training focused specifically on recognizing and addressing discrimination. Miguel Hernandez, recently promoted to Senior Training Director, would lead this initiative, incorporating lessons from the incident into practical guidance for frontline staff. "Our cabin crews are often the first line of defense against discriminatory behavior," Miguel explained as he outlined the training approach. "But many hesitate to intervene without clear protocols. This program establishes unambiguous guidelines while empowering staff to use their judgment in real-time situations." He displayed slides showing specific intervention points from the twins' incident. "Notice here when the passenger first made comments about the children's presence. This would be our first intervention point under the new protocol. By addressing microaggressions early, we potentially prevent escalation to physical confrontation." The training included role-playing scenarios, video analysis of real incidents, and specific language for de-escalating tensions. Most importantly, it did emphasize crew authority to enforce respectful behavior regardless of a passenger's status or connections. Second, a passenger conduct accountability system with clear consequences for discriminatory behavior. This would be implemented across all Global Airways routes and shared with partner airlines. "We've always had behavioral guidelines," Elena Morales noted, "but they were inconsistently enforced and rarely resulted in meaningful consequences. This new system creates transparent accountability regardless of a passenger's status or connections." The system included a 3-tier approach: verbal warning with documentation, written notice of potential removal ban, actual removal and status review. Third, a young traveler advocacy program designed to ensure unaccompanied minors received appropriate support and protection throughout their journey. Sofia Rodriguez, now promoted to cabin service manager, would oversee this initiative. "Many children travel alone for various reasons," she explained. "They deserve both independence and protection, regardless of which cabin they're seated in." The twins themselves had been consulted during the program's development, their exceptional insight providing valuable perspective despite their young age. Zuri had suggested a restorative rather than purely punitive approach for first-time offenders. "Mom, maybe people should have a chance to learn from mistakes instead of just being punished forever." She'd proposed during a family dinner discussion, like how Ms. Whitman might never understand why what she did was wrong if she's just banned with no explanation. This thoughtful suggestion had been incorporated into the final protocol, creating a pathway to reinstatement that required education and community service rather than simple punishment. The program's implementation would be measured through specific metrics. Incident reporting rates and initial increase would actually indicate success as more subtle discrimination was being recognized. Customer satisfaction ratings related to feeling respected during travel. Reduction in disruptive passenger incidents. Crew confidence in addressing discriminatory behavior. "We're not just responding to a single incident," Olivia emphasized. "We're addressing a systemic issue that affects passenger experience across our entire operation." Global Airways' approach quickly became a case study in corporate responsibility. Harvard Business Review published an analysis titled "From Incident to Innovation: How Global Airways Transformed a Crisis into Systemic Change." The twins continued their academic pursuits while occasionally providing feedback on the program's development. Their insights proved surprisingly valuable, combining children's perspective with exceptional analytical abilities. Katherine Whitman's case had proceeded through the established channels. Her appeal of the status revocation was denied by the Passenger Conduct Committee. However, following the twins' recommendation for proportional response, she was offered a pathway to potential reinstatement. Ms. Whitman may reapply for travel privileges after completing an approved anti-bias education program and 200 hours of community service focused on youth advocacy. The final determination stated, "This balanced approach, firm consequences with opportunity for genuine growth, reflected the thoughtful influence of children who understood that justice need not be vengeful to be effective." The most meaningful validation came from passengers themselves. Customer feedback included comments like, "As a mother who travels with children, I feel more confident knowing Global Airways has clear protocols for ensuring their dignity and safety. I witnessed discriminatory behavior on a previous flight and felt helpless. Knowing there's now a system for addressing this makes me more likely to choose Global." The Dignity in Travel program demonstrates that corporate values can align with human values. Accountability and respect benefit everyone. As the program rolled out across Global Airways' international network, the incident that sparked it took on new significance, not just as a viral moment of justice, but as the catalyst for meaningful industry evolution. 3 months after the incident, Olivia Taylor testified before the Congressional Subcommittee on Transportation and Infrastructure. The hearing room was packed with industry representatives, media, and public observers. "What happened to my daughters reflects a broader reality in air travel," Olivia stated. "Discriminatory treatment occurs daily throughout our transportation system, but most victims lack the platform or power to ensure accountability." The hearing had been convened to consider the Passenger Dignity and Safety Act, legislation directly inspired by the viral incident. The proposed bill would establish federal standards for addressing discrimination in commercial transportation, with specific protections for vulnerable travelers, including children, elderly passengers, and those with disabilities. "Global Airways has implemented comprehensive reforms," Olivia continued, "but meaningful change requires industry-wide standards and federal enforcement mechanisms." Congressman James Martinez, the bill's primary sponsor, addressed the committee. "This legislation isn't about a single incident, no matter how viral. It's about recognizing a pattern of discrimination that affects thousands of travelers daily, particularly people of color, religious minorities, and other marginalized groups who often lack the resources or platform to demand accountability." Industry response had evolved significantly in the months following the incident. Initially defensive, other major carriers had gradually adopted similar policies as public pressure mounted, and Global Airways' approach demonstrated business benefits alongside ethical value. When we implemented the Dignity in Travel program, we saw immediate improvements in customer satisfaction, employee morale, and even operational efficiency, Olivia reported. Contrary to industry concerns, clear anti-discrimination protocols don't impede service, they enhance it. The Federal Aviation Administration had already updated its passenger conduct guidelines, incorporating elements from Global Airways' approach. International aviation organizations were considering similar standards for global implementation. "This isn't just an American issue," noted FAA Administrator Richard Bennett during the hearing. "The viral nature of the incident has sparked discussions throughout the global aviation community about establishing unified standards for passenger conduct and protection." Consumer protection agencies had opened investigations into industry practices, finding significant disparities in how passengers of different backgrounds were treated during travel disruptions, upgrades, and service recovery situations. "Our preliminary findings indicate that passengers of color are 47% more likely to have their premium status questioned, 63% more likely to be subjected to additional verification procedures, and 89% more likely to experience escalated confrontations with other passengers about their presence in premium cabins," reported Consumer Protection Bureau investigator Lisa Nguyen. Katherine Whitman had maintained a low profile since the incident, declining interview requests and keeping her social media accounts deactivated. Sources close to her reported that she had enrolled in a comprehensive bias education program and begun volunteer work with a youth advocacy organization, steps that suggested genuine reflection rather than mere image rehabilitation. The twins themselves had largely returned to normal life, their academic pursuits continuing despite brief media attention. Zuri's research on literary analysis of civil rights narratives had won additional recognition, while Zara's mathematical work received university-level interest. When asked during a rare interview how the incident had affected them, Zuri replied with characteristic thoughtfulness, "It showed us that speaking up appropriately can create change beyond just our own situation. Our experience helped make travel safer for other children, which gives meaning to something that could have just been painful." The impact extended beyond aviation into other transportation sectors. Amtrak announced similar passenger conduct policies. Rideshare companies implemented anti-discrimination training for drivers. Cruise lines reviewed their procedures for handling misconduct aboard ships. Davis Reynolds, the businessman who had briefly supported Katherine before distancing himself, found unexpected redemption through public acknowledgement of his complicity. In a LinkedIn post that went viral in business circles, he wrote, "I failed a critical moral test when I supported discriminatory behavior rather than standing up for what was right. My silence and initial agreement made me complicit in the mistreatment of children who had done nothing wrong. I'm sharing this not for sympathy, but because I believe acknowledging our failures is the first step toward genuine change." His candid acknowledgement received praise for its honesty, transforming his story from cautionary tale to example of accountability and growth. What began as a single incident has catalyzed an industry-wide reckoning, observed Transportation Secretary Michael Davis. We're seeing the beginning of a fundamental shift in how we approach dignity and respect in public transportation. As the congressional hearing concluded, the subcommittee chair announced support for the proposed legislation. The incident that began with a slap in first class was transforming into federal protection for millions of travelers. Olivia's testimony concluded with a powerful observation. "My daughters had me to ensure accountability. This legislation will ensure all travelers have the protection of law, regardless of who their mother happens to be." 6 months after the incident, Katherine Whitman sat across from her therapist in a sunlit office overlooking Central Park. Once impeccably polished in designer attire, she now wore simple business casual clothing, her previously perfect manicure replaced by practical, unpainted nails. "I've been thinking about what you said last session," Katherine began, fidgeting with the edge of her cardigan, "about the difference between feeling remorse for consequences versus remorse for actions." "And what have you concluded?" her therapist asked, noting the physical changes in her client, the absence of status markers that had previously defined her presentation. "At first, I was devastated by losing my job, my reputation, my status. I was angry at everyone but myself," Katherine admitted. "But lately, I keep seeing those girls' faces in my dreams, not just when I slapped Zuri, but before that, how composed they were despite my cruelty. How I became exactly the kind of person I always claimed to despise, someone who uses power to harm those with less of it." Katherine's transformation hadn't been immediate or simple. Her initial apologies had been self-serving, focused primarily on her own losses. The mandatory bias training she attended as part of her assault settlement initially felt like punishment rather than education. The turning point came 3 months after the incident, when she encountered a similar situation in a restaurant, a wealthy patron berating a young black server over a minor issue. Watching from another table, Katherine saw her own behavior reflected and felt physically ill. "I approached the man afterward," Katherine told her therapist. "I said, I used to act like you just did. It cost me my career, my reputation, and my self-respect." He was shocked enough to actually listen. We ended up having a 20-minute conversation about entitlement and its consequences. This small intervention marked the beginning of genuine change, Katherine recognizing her behavior pattern rather than viewing the incident as an isolated mistake. "The strangest part is that losing everything has been clarifying," she continued. "I've had to examine who I am without the trappings of success, without the designer clothes and exclusive access and special treatment, and I didn't like what I found underneath all that." Meanwhile, the twins had continued their academic journeys with typical excellence. Their experience became a footnote rather than a defining moment, integrated into their understanding of the world but not permitted to dominate it. "We don't want to be known as those girls who got slapped in first class," Zara explained during a mathematics competition where a well-meaning teacher had referenced the incident. "We'd rather be recognized for our academic contributions." Zuri had incorporated elements of the experience into a literary analysis examining dignity as portrayed in civil rights literature. Her personal perspective adding depth to her already insightful work. The paper won national recognition, earning her an invitation to present at a university symposium despite her young age. Literature gives us frameworks for understanding difficult experiences. She explained to the audience, when Maya Angelou writes about maintaining dignity in the face of discrimination, she's providing both comfort and guidance for readers facing similar challenges. Olivia's leadership at Global Airways had gained new dimensions. Already respected for her business acumen, she now became recognized for her values-driven approach to corporate governance. Harvard Business School developed a case study examining her response to the incident, particularly how she balanced her roles as mother and CEO during a highly public crisis. The most difficult aspect was separating my maternal instinct to protect my children from my professional responsibility to ensure fair process. She explained during a leadership forum. I wanted to immediately ban the passenger for life, but my daughters reminded me that justice should be about growth, not just punishment. Sophia and Miguel had both advanced in their careers, their professional handling of the incident demonstrating qualities that earned them promotions. Sophia now trained new flight attendants in conflict de-escalation techniques, while Miguel had developed the curriculum for Global Airways' enhanced anti-discrimination training. What happened that day showed us that protocols aren't enough. Miguel explained to a new class of flight attendants, we need both clear procedures and human judgment to address discrimination effectively. The Hamiltons, who had witnessed the incident, became advocates for the Passenger Dignity and Safety Act. Their testimony about what they observed adding credibility to congressional deliberations. At 70+ years of age, they found unexpected purpose in passenger rights advocacy. We've been flying first class for decades, Margaret testified, and we've seen countless instances of discrimination that went unaddressed because victims lacked power or platform. This legislation ensures that dignity isn't dependent on connections. Amanda Peterson's spontaneous decision to live stream the incident had unexpected career implications. Her thoughtful commentary during the unfolding situation caught the attention of a media company, leading to a position developing digital content focused on corporate accountability and social justice. Sometimes being a responsible digital citizen means documenting injustice, she explained in a TED Talk about ethical live streaming. But it also means considering the dignity of everyone involved, especially vulnerable parties like children. Perhaps most significantly, Katherine herself had begun speaking to corporate groups about her experience, not as a victim of cancel culture, as some had framed it, but as someone who had faced genuine consequences for harmful behavior and emerged with difficult but valuable insights. I'm not here to excuse what I did, she told a financial industry conference. I'm here to help others recognize the biases that led to my behavior before they make similar mistakes, to understand how privilege creates blind spots that can destroy careers and harm innocent people. Her presentations weren't inspirational redemption stories, but honest examinations of entitlement, prejudice, and accountability. Some audiences received her message with resistance, others with thoughtful consideration, but all remembered the cautionary tale of how quickly privilege could become a weapon and how swiftly consequences could follow. The hardest part was admitting that my behavior wasn't an isolated incident or momentary lapse, she explained during a particularly vulnerable moment in her therapy session. It was the inevitable result of patterns I'd cultivated for years, believing my convenience mattered more than others' dignity, that my status entitled me to deference, that my perceptions trumped others' reality. 6 months after a moment of rage in first class, lives had been transformed in ways both public and private. The incident had forced reckonings, sparked growth, and created unexpected paths forward for everyone involved. From the twins who maintained their dignity to the woman who momentarily lost hers. 6 months later, Olivia Taylor's office on the 40th floor of Global Airways headquarters offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows admitted golden afternoon light as she reviewed quarterly reports on the Dignity in Travel program. A knock at the door interrupted her concentration. "Package for you, Madam President," her assistant announced. The envelope bore a law firm's return address. Inside, Olivia found a handwritten letter on cream stationery. The familiar handwriting belonged to Katherine Whitman. "Dear President Taylor, Zuri and Zara, 6 months ago, I committed an inexcusable act that revealed the worst aspects of my character. No apology can erase what happened, but I want you to know that I've spent these months in serious reflection and education. The court-mandated bias training was only the beginning. Since then, I've been working with a therapist specializing in privilege and entitlement issues, completed additional diversity education programs voluntarily, and begun examining the patterns of behavior that led to that moment on the plane. I don't expect or deserve forgiveness. Rather, I'm writing to tell you that your daughter's dignity in the face of my cruelty has become the standard against which I measure my growth. Their composure revealed my lack of control. Their maturity highlighted my childishness. The contrast haunts me daily, as it should. I'm now volunteering with an organization that supports unaccompanied minor refugees navigating air travel to reach sponsor families. These children, many who don't speak English, traveling alone to a strange country, face fear and confusion that I once would have dismissed as not my problem. The irony isn't lost on me. Helping children feel safe and respected in precisely the environment where I failed to do so. The consequences I've faced were entirely appropriate. My career change from finance to education has been humbling, but ultimately more fulfilling than I could have imagined. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what matters. With sincere respect and continued regret, Katherine Whitman. Olivia set the letter aside thoughtfully. The media narrative point had long since moved on from the incident, but its impact continued rippling through lives and systems. Global Airways' Dignity and Travel program had been adopted by 3 other major carriers, with industry-wide implementation under consideration by regulatory bodies. The metrics told a compelling story of systemic change. Discrimination complaints across Global Airways had decreased 78% since implementing the new protocols. Customer satisfaction scores had reached record highs, particularly in categories related to respectful service. Employee retention had improved, with crew members citing the company's values-based approach as a significant factor in their job satisfaction. Most importantly, the twins had continued thriving. Their academic achievements accumulated without being overshadowed by the incident. Zuri's literary analysis had been published in an educational journal, extraordinary for a student her age. Zara's mathematical research had caught the attention of university professors who offered mentorship opportunities. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Zuri asked, entering the office for their weekly after-school visit. Her face showed no lingering physical mark from Katherine's slap, though the experience had left its imprint in other ways, a slightly more watchful quality in public spaces, a deeper understanding of injustice that infused her academic work. Olivia handed her the letter. "This arrived today." Zuri read it carefully, her expression thoughtful. When she finished, she passed it to Zara, who had followed her sister into the office. "Do you think she means it?" Zara asked after reading. "I believe she does," Olivia replied. "People rarely change completely, but significant experiences can create meaningful growth." "Should we write back?" Zuri wondered. Olivia considered this. "That's entirely up to you. You're under no obligation, but it might provide closure if you want it." The twins exchanged one of their silent communications, a glance that contained paragraphs of shared understanding. "Maybe we could write one letter together," Zara suggested. "Not to say everything's okay, but to acknowledge that she's trying to do better." Zuri nodded. "That feels right. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition of growth." Olivia smiled, proud of their maturity and compassion. "I think that's a wonderful approach." The incident had become a teaching moment for all involved, the twins learning about injustice and resilience. Katherine discovering the consequences of privilege misused, Olivia balancing personal and professional ethics, and countless others witnessing accountability in action. Most telling was that the Global Airways stock price had outperformed industry averages by 18% since implementing the Dignity and Travel program. The business case for ethical treatment had proved as compelling as the moral one, a fact that convinced even the most profit-focused executives to support similar initiatives. "There's another part to this story," Olivia told her daughters. "The Passenger Dignity and Safety Act passed committee today. It's expected to receive full congressional approval next month." "The one inspired by what happened to us?" Zuri asked. "Yes. It will establish federal protections and accountability measures across all commercial transportation. Your experience will help ensure that thousands of other travelers receive the respect they deserve." The twins absorbed this information with characteristic thoughtfulness. Their individual trauma had catalyzed systemic change, a difficult experience transformed into meaningful impact. So something good came from something bad, Zara observed. Often the most important changes begin that way. Olivia agreed. The question is whether we allow difficult experiences to define us or motivate us. The three Taylors looked out over the Manhattan skyline together, their shared journey having strengthened bonds already forged through years of navigating the world as an exceptional Black family in predominantly white spaces. The incident that began with discrimination had evolved into a testament to their values and resilience. 1-year anniversary. The Harvard Business School auditorium was filled to capacity for the commencement address. Graduating students, faculty, and family members watched as Olivia Taylor approached the podium. Her tailored suit conveyed authority without ostentation, and her confident posture reflected the leadership qualities that had made her a sought-after speaker. 1 year ago today, she began, my daughters experienced something no child should face: public assault based purely on assumptions about who belongs in premium spaces. In the front row, Zara and Zuri sat with perfect posture, a year older and perhaps an inch taller, but with the same composed dignity that had impressed millions of viewers. Their academic accomplishments had continued accumulating: national recognition for Zuri's literary analysis, a published paper on computational mathematics for Zara. That incident could have remained simply a viral moment of what many called instant karma, Olivia continued. Instead, it became the catalyst for systemic transformation across an entire industry. She outlined the tangible outcomes Global Airways' Dignity and Travel program, now implemented by 80% of major carriers. Federal legislation establishing passenger protection standards awaiting final approval. Training protocols that had measurably reduced discriminatory incidents throughout commercial aviation. But the most meaningful transformation happened not in systems, but in individuals. Olivia observed, her gaze sweeping the auditorium. Katherine Whitman sat in the middle of the auditorium, not highlighted or announced, but present at Olivia's personal invitation. Her appearance had changed subtly but significantly. The designer labels and status markers were gone, replaced by professional attire that emphasized substance over display. The entitled expression that had characterized her viral moment had disappeared, replaced by thoughtful attention. When we convert moments of discrimination into opportunities for education, we create pathways for genuine change. Olivia continued, this doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it recognizes that accountability can lead to transformation when approached with sincerity. Katherine's journey had indeed proved surprisingly genuine. After completing her legal obligations, she had voluntarily enrolled in additional education on bias and privilege. Her community service with unaccompanied minor refugees evolved from court-mandated hours to genuine commitment. Most significantly, she had left finance entirely, accepting a position developing ethical training programs for corporate executives, her experience serving as both cautionary tale and roadmap for change. My daughters taught me something profound that day, Olivia told the graduates. They showed me that dignity isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you respond to treatment. The twins exchanged a small smile at hearing their own words reflected back. Their composure during the incident hadn't been performative, but genuine, the natural expression of values their mother had instilled through both teaching and example. As you leave Harvard Business School today, you'll enter a world where your decisions affect not just balance sheets, but human lives. Olivia continued, you'll face moments that test your character and reveal your values. In those moments, remember that true leadership isn't about asserting power over others, but about using your influence to ensure everyone's dignity remains intact. The industry changes sparked by the incident had proven remarkably durable. What began as policy adjustments at Global Airways had evolved into industry standards, then federal regulations, and finally international protocols. The European Aviation Safety Agency had adopted similar passenger protection guidelines, with Asia-Pacific carriers following suit. The metrics tell a compelling story, Olivia noted. When we implemented the Dignity and Travel program, customer satisfaction increased 23%, employee retention improved 17%. Our stock outperformed industry averages by double digits. Doing the right thing proved to be good business, a lesson I hope you'll carry into your careers. After the speech, Katherine approached the twins cautiously. Their last interaction had been the physical confrontation captured on video and seen by millions. This meeting, carefully arranged and agreed upon by all parties, represented a different kind of courage. Zuri, Zara, Katherine said, her voice steady but humble. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you. Thank you for the letter, Zuri replied politely. We appreciated your honesty. I think about what happened every day, Katherine admitted, emotion briefly cracking her composure. Not just what I did, but how you responded, with more dignity than I'd shown in my entire career. People can change, Zara offered quietly. That's what we wrote in our letter. I received it yesterday. Katherine nodded. It meant more than I can express. The conversation wasn't long or deeply emotional. It didn't need to be. The simple fact of its occurrence, conducted with mutual respect and without phones recording every word, represented genuine growth from all parties. As Katherine walked away, Olivia rejoined her daughters. I'm proud of you both, she said simply, squeezing their shoulders. For talking to her, Zuri asked. For everything, Olivia replied. For maintaining your dignity then, and for demonstrating grace now. The three tailors exited the auditorium together, their journey having come full circle. What began as a moment of discrimination had transformed into an opportunity for education, system change, and even personal growth for the person who had caused harm. The power of dignity under pressure had proved more transformative than revenge could ever have been. Every day, thousands of travelers face discrimination in spaces where they have every right to be. Olivia Taylor's voice narrates over footage of diverse passengers moving through airports worldwide. Most don't have the platform or power to ensure accountability, but together we can change that. The screen shows a montage of travelers from various backgrounds experiencing subtle and overt discrimination. Questioned credentials, suspicious glances, unnecessary verification, hostile treatment from fellow passengers. 1 year ago, my daughters experienced what too many travelers face daily: assumptions about who belongs in premium spaces. Their dignity in that moment inspired changes that transformed an entire industry. Footage plays of the Dignity in Travel program in action. Flight attendants intervening in discriminatory situations. Passengers of all backgrounds receiving equal respect. Crew members undergoing training with Miguel. But real change requires more than corporate policies. It requires each of us making conscious choices about how we treat others in shared spaces. The camera focuses on everyday moments of intervention. A passenger speaking up when another traveler is being mistreated. A flight attendant addressing discriminatory comments before they escalate. Travelers from different backgrounds helping each other navigate travel challenges. When you witness discrimination, whether in an airport, a train station, or any public space, you have a choice. Will you remain silent, or will you speak up appropriately? The screen shows Zara and Zuri in their respective academic environments. Zara explaining a mathematical concept to classmates. Zuri presenting her literary analysis at a symposium. My daughters maintained their dignity, not because cameras were recording, but because they understood that how we respond to mistreatment reveals our character more than the mistreatment itself. The scene shifts to passengers actively supporting the Passenger Dignity and Safety Act through calls to representatives, community organizing, and social media advocacy. Your voice matters in creating spaces where everyone travels with dignity. Share your experiences using #Dignity in travel to help identify patterns that still need addressing. The final montage shows diverse travelers of all ages being treated with equal respect across various transportation settings, airports, trains, ride shares. Together, we can ensure that every traveler experiences the dignity they deserve, Olivia concludes, because first class should refer not just to a cabin category, but to how we treat each other. The screen transitions to the Global Airways logo with Dignity in Travel beneath it. Has this story resonated with you? Like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of dignity, justice, and transformation. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Your story could help others recognize and address discrimination in travel spaces. Hit that notification bell to join a community committed to ensuring everyone travels with respect, regardless of age, race, or background, because dignity isn't a privilege. It's a right that belongs to us all. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.